Call to order this regular meeting of the Beverly City Council, Monday, December 21st, 2020. Miss Kent, could you please call the roll?
Ames?
Here.
Feldman?
Here.
Flaherty?
Here.
Brady? Flowers?
Here.
Houseman?
Here.
Rand? Rotundo?
Here.
And Guanci.
Here. Councilor Rand and Councilor Houseman, could you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United
of the
States
United States of America
and to the republic
and to the republic
for which it
for
stands,
which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty
with liberty
and justice
and justice
for all.
for all.
Great job, guys. Tag team champions. First on our agenda is a resolution for Mr. Robert Davis. Mr. Robert Davis lives in Ward 3 on Country Drive, and he celebrated his 100th birthday on Saturday. The Beverly Vietnam veterans put together a little ceremony for him, which I was honored to be invited to and speak on the council's behalf. Mayor Kale also was there, came by, and we presented him, Mr. Davis, a proclamation from the city. Jerry Paracella, our state rep, was there also, and he presented a proclamation from the state. And now I'll read the resolution that we gave him on Saturday. Whereas Mr. Robert Davis was born in Salem and eventually moved to Beverly. Mr. Davis's family includes his daughter Nancy, his son-in-law David, his granddaughters and their husbands, Jennifer and Jim, and Heather and David. Mr. Davis has 4 great-grandchildren, Emily, Sarah, Anna, and David. Whereas Robert Davis joined the 102nd Field Artillery Massachusetts National Guard 26th Infantry Division in 1938. His date of enlistment was on December 2nd, 1940, and his date of entry into active service was January 16th, 1941. His first tour of duty was spent on coastal patrol in North Carolina. Whereas on August 7th, 1944, he sailed for Europe and arrived in Normandy, France on September 7th, 1944. While serving in Europe, he fought battles and campaigns in France, the Rhineland, Ardennes, and Central Europe. Whereas in February of 1945, he was wounded in Fraularten, Germany, and returned home. Robert was honorably discharged on October 7th, 1945. Whereas Robert Davis was recognized for his service as the recipient of the Good Conduct Medal, the American Defense Medal, the European, African, Middle Eastern Campaign Ribbon, and the Purple Heart. Whereas in August of 2000, he received the Special Diploma awarded by France to Allied Forces soldiers for the efforts to help liberate France. Whereas Mr. Davis worked at the United Shoe Machinery Corporation in Beverly until his retirement. Robert was an avid golfer and still enjoys watching golf on television. Whereas through the years, Robert spent time going to both the Senior Center in Peabody and the Beverly Senior Center. He made many friends and enjoyed dancing and listening to big band music. Whereas Mr. Davis appreciates his friendship and care from his neighbors, he enjoys the annual neighborhood cookout, relaxing in the sun in warm weather, and spending time with his family. I would entertain a motion to approve that resolution.
So moved.
Second.
A roll call vote, please.
You also have to read.
I'm sorry, Lisa.
You need to read the script.
Oh, right, I'll do that after this. Thank you. You knew I was going to forget.
Ames?
An enthusiastic yes.
Feldman?
Yes.
Flaherty?
Yes.
Flowers?
Yes.
Brady?
Yes.
Houseman?
Yes.
Rand?
Yes.
Rotundo,
Yes.
and Guanci.
Yes, Mr. Davis, if you're watching at home, thank you for tuning in. We appreciate your service. Mr. Davis lives by himself at age 100. Everybody checks in on him now and then, but what a life well lived. All right, step back. Thank you, Mrs. Kent. Script for remotely conducted city council meetings, Monday, December 21st, 2020. Confirming member access. As a preliminary matter, this is Paul Guanci, President of the Beverly City Council. Before beginning the meeting, I'd like to announce that this meeting is being recorded by the City of Beverly and live streamed by BevCam on both Channel 99 and via BevCam's YouTube channel. I'm confirming that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Head nod would be great. Thumbs up. Introduction to remote meeting. Good evening. This open meeting of the Beverly City Council is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of COVID-19. In order to mitigate the transmission of the virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspended the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as adequate alternative public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting does have public participation. We do have a public hearing at 7:15. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and televised live, and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other participants or viewers may be able to see and hear you, and anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. You have the option to turn off your video if you're participating via computer. All participants should keep their microphones or phones muted unless recognized by me, the chair, to reduce background noise and feedback. Please wait until the person speaking has finished before speaking so we can clearly hear all participants. In addition, because of the remote meeting, I am going to read Rule 22 of the Rules and Regulations of the Beverly City Council. Rule 22. All subcommittees of the council shall cause records to be kept of their proceedings. They shall report by ordinance, order, or resolve, unless otherwise provided by law. No subcommittee shall act by separate consultation, and no report of as a body shall be received unless agreed in subcommittee, actually notified, and assembled for the purpose in hand, and signed by a majority of the councils of the subcommittee. Every subcommittee to which any subject matter may be referred shall report thereon as soon as possible after full consideration thereof and a vote thereon. However, if the council may by majority vote order any matter pending before subcommittee to be acted upon, the subcommittee at its next meeting and or to be forthwith returned to the full council. So those of you that are new here tonight, all that means is rather than take committee reports and vote them out to the full council on the floor, we'll already have them out and the council will vote on the floor. So Ms. Kent, could you please call that roll? And we need 5 votes to do that. Ms. Kent?
Ames,
Yes.
Feldman,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Flowers,
Yes.
Brady,
Yes.
Houseman,
Yes.
Rand,
Yes.
Rotundo,
Yes.
and Guanci.
Yes. Meeting ground rules for public hearings. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, I'll invite the council to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. You may mute yourself or be muted by the meeting host by clicking the microphone mute/unmute icon, pressing the mute button on your telephone, or by pressing *6 on your telephone keypad. Please reserve the chat function for technical difficulties and strictly the city council until I ask for public comment. If you would like to speak during the public hearing, ask a question or make a comment, please type in the chat and that you'll be recognized in order of typing in. Please remember to speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. And please state your name. If you're a member of the public that would like to comment on order number 276, please state your name and your address for the record. Wow, that never gets easier. That never gets easier. So at this time, I would first entertain a motion to accept the minutes of our previous meeting, which was held on December 7th, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
Roll
Haynes,
call, please.
Yes.
Feldman,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Flowers,
Yes.
Brady's,
Yes.
Houseman,
Yes.
Rand,
Yes.
Rotundo,
Yes.
and Guanxi.
Yes. Ms. Kent, it's almost 7:15. Let's go to our public hearing on order number 276, Mayor Proposed Appropriation for Fiscal Year 2021. Would you read that order?
Dear Honorable City Council, last Friday, the state legislature passed the final state budget for fiscal year 2021. It now awaits the governor's signature to become complete and approved. Since there is already a consensus between the legislator and Governor Baker on the state and funding levels from municipalities, I therefore ask that you set a public hearing during your meeting this evening, and I respectfully respect your approval to raise and appropriate additional funds to be used during fiscal year 2021. This budget year has been unprecedented in many regards. We were faced with a level of uncertainty due to the pandemic, and we responded by making responsible budget reductions and passing a budget in June that preserved the city's financial footing and continued to deliver the core services our residents need. Although significant uncertainty still exists regarding the region's financial outlook, Governor Baker and the state legislator have committed to a local aid package for FY 2021 above the reduced level the city forecast. The funding represents a level funding of FY 2020 amounts for the key area of unrestricted general government aid and an adjustment award upward for Chapter 70 due to the inventory adjustment and enrollment increase within the Beverly schools. This is certainly welcome news as our FY 2021 budget made a challenging reductions that would not otherwise have happened. FY 2021 budget also relied on draws from the city's stabilization account and the city's overlay reserve accounts to balance. Now with level funding and state aid, much of the reduced spending levels and reliance on stabilization reserves can be restored to preserve critical service while reserving rainy day funds for future use. In particular, with the planned increase in debt services of close to $1.5 million in FY 2022 to support the final loan for a new middle school and the total borrowing for new police station, as well as anticipated cost increases on new cycle contract planning for potentially significant state aid cuts in fiscal year 2022. It is critical importance to the community that we restore and preserve our stabilization fund at this time. I've outlined the proposed appropriations in the following summary and look forward to discussing them in an upcoming public hearing tonight. Last, I should note that this additional appropriation does not change the amount of property taxes that the city is relying on to fund its FY 2021 budget. When the city council approved the budget in June, it was predicted on the same level of property tax revenue as we will require from our property owners in this proposed revised budget. We are now asking any more of our taxpayers than we did in June. In fact, as stated above, the one-time nature of much of these appropriation requests will restore budget flexibility and reserve, which will be necessary to reallocate in FY 2022 to maintain service levels and observe needed costs increase in our debt service and sanitation budgets. Please initiate action on this appropriation regarding this evening by scheduling a public hearing for your next city council meeting. Thank you for your ongoing and valued partnership in serving our residents and businesses, particularly during this challenging time. Sincerely yours, Michael P. Cahill, Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Kent. And Mayor Cahill is here, as well as Finance Director Brian Ailes. Mr. Ailes, will you be leading the discussion or the mayor?
I'll briefly comment and let Mr. Ailes really walk you through the details. Thank you, Mr. President. Just want to make sure that I really kind of emphasize that this is before you as a request for supplemental appropriation, but the additional funds on the city side are really bringing us back to a level funded level from this past year. We had feared significant state aid cuts, and the legislature and the governor committed to trying to keep us at a level with last year. So that's what this would do. On the school side, it's some additional funding based on enrollment and some recalculation of Chapter 70 to address some of our higher risk populations within the schools, in addition to, as I said, the additional student count. So those are what make up the money that's in front of you. I think it's critically important, and I'll let Mr. Ailes really get into the details, that the first step we take is to step away from relying on our reserves. We're going to have to rely on some reserves this fiscal year because of that expected shortfall in state funding. When they came through with level funding, we're able to right away step away from using the reserves, which then will be available to us next year, as needed. On the school side, this is, again, I'll let Mr. Ailes and then if there's an opportunity, Dr. Chirocek as well, articulate how we all have worked through the school's needs in a really unique year, a year when it's our school administration and our teachers and all the staff working in our schools are doing amazing work, both in person and remotely, to teach our kids in the most unique time any of us have ever faced. And so, we feel it's entirely needed and appropriate that additional Chapter 70 amount be appropriated over to the schools. That said, I'll leave the rest of the details to Mr. Ailes. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Ailes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, councilors. If I could, Mr. President, would you mind if I shared a spreadsheet which kind of lays out all of the specifics of the order before you?
No, of course, I expected you to. Great.
Sorry to interrupt, but I want to be president.
How do we get rid of her?
Is that viewable?
I have it.
No?
No, I have it, Brian.
It is. We all saw it.
Okay.
There it is.
Good? Okay.
Thank you.
So I wanted to call this up because this puts up pretty much all the specifics of the order that's before you, and the public might not have had a chance to review this before this evening. So in an effort to kind of share the information, up top, what we're requesting is there's really two sources of funds that we're looking to appropriate here, or in some cases redistribute. The largest of which was noted in the remarks that Mrs. Kent read, as well as Mayor Cahill's remarks, it really constitutes a state aid that is effectively level funding of FY20 amounts. And that accounts for about $3.7 million. It's the $3,708,420. That is technically called a raise and appropriate. The other component of this is more of a transfer because these funds were appropriated earlier in the budget when the council passed it in June. And as a result of the final state budget, we would like to redistribute some of the funds that were originally budgeted in some state aid sections into the other areas we're listing below. And that constitutes $33,660. So to redistribute the $3,742,080, the first and what we would consider the most important, Mayor Cahill mentioned, and that is to eliminate our reliance on the stabilization fund to fund the FY21 budget. So that is $1,059,808. The next line is a $100,000 request, and effectively what that will do is it will seek to appropriate funds into a number of funds. The most notable is the police detail account, and this fund is noted to have been operating in a deficit for a number of years, and it actually goes back decades. And since Mayor Cahill and I have been sitting in our seats, we have rectified the situation, implemented new procedures to effectively prevent any further deficit spending. And now we're just seeking to appropriate money into that fund to clean it up. It's effectively been a comment on our management comment letter from Powers and Sullivan every year. The benefit of this funding as well is that once it gets appropriated, it will have a positive effect on our balance sheet and therefore will become available next year in our free cash certification. So it's not money that's actually lost. The next one, and before I go any further, I'll also note that we have a number of department heads here this evening to talk about a lot of the specifics within these requests. And I say that as I come to the next line, which is the purchase of a pumper fire truck for our fire department. We would like to request $750,000 to make that purchase. In addition, as Mayor Cahill noted, we would like to transfer $867,863 to the Beverly Public Schools. That figure is not a random figure. That figure actually represents, when you compare the final state aid numbers of FY21 to the final state aid figures of FY20 in the category of Chapter 70, that's the difference. So that's basically the increase in state funds when compared to last year in the Chapter 70 line. The next component is a transfer to police department. And this is comprised of really three different areas that we're hoping to address. The first is an additional vehicle purchase. We historically, and as a matter of best practice, replace 3 vehicles every year in that department. They're very high use vehicles. They get a lot of wear and tear. They barely ever shut off because they're constantly running and out on patrols. And so we have a formula where we replace 3 of those vehicles roughly every year. When we passed the budget in back in June, we collectively made the decision to fall back from that typical 3 vehicle purchase, and we built in a budget that would accommodate the purchase of 2 vehicles. We'd like to restore that now that the funds are available. The second component within the police department addresses staffing levels. This additional funds would allow us to increase staffing levels by 2. And as you know, we have talked multiple years now in a row about the need and the desire to increase our staffing level within that department for some specific purposes. The last component related to the police department budget has to do with, it's called Flsa Overtime. It typically is about a $50,000 a year expenditure. That's what we budgeted for in June. However, the calculations proved it to be a roughly $90,000 expenditure this year. And this is a federally mandated cost that we have to absorb every year. The next component, along with, well, I'll just go line by line. The part-time staff effectively has to do with COVID-related costs. Our CARES funding will expire December 31st, but there are some things we are doing that we want to continue to do beyond December 31st. And in order to do that, we have to basically find a way to do it. This would be a $15,000 cost to staff the front lobby of City Hall to help coordinate and maintain certain levels of people within the building, make sure they're exiting properly, and help to kind of guide them through the building to continue to provide public access while keeping a safe environment for employees and the public. The next component is about a $20,000 request for the planning department. There are 2 contracts that we have in place that we are seeking to modify slightly. One is the master plan and the other one is the climate action plan. So this $20,000 would go to modifications and adjustments to the scope of those existing contracts. The next line for $100,000 has to do with the tremendous work the health department's been doing during this pandemic and will need to continue to do. This amount is essentially a contingency of some degree because we know that we have a very good grant director. We have a very good department head over there that's actively seeking ways to fund the initiatives that they're doing. But if the CARES money does end up expiring, if there aren't areas where we can look to for federal or state money related to COVID costs, there are things we still need to do, such as contract tracing, and we have a staffing structure in place for inspections that is really designed to combat the pandemic, but we need to make sure we have money to continue those services if these other sources don't materialize. If this money does go unspent and we have grants or other sources that we're able to utilize, this money will go back to the general fund and go into free cash. We likely would not seek to repurpose it unless an unforeseen need arised. The public property budget increase of $150,000. You'll recall when the budget was set in June that we reduced the Department of Public Works by roughly $500,000 to balance the budget. This is seeking to restore some of that. We typically rely on that department for a lot of unknowns. And as the year goes on and things crop up that need attention, we look to Mike Collins, Commissioner Collins, and his crews, who do excellent work to plug in and deal with what needs to be done. There have been some asks that we've had to push on them within the first 6 months of the year that were unforeseen. And because we took their budget in June and kind of wrung out a lot of the flexibility that was a benefit before to balance the budget, that flexibility doesn't exist for him to address these concerns. So this $150,000 would restore that and make him whole again. And then the last piece is the reserve for unforeseen. In June, and typically every year, the city council appropriates roughly $250,000 into this category. Because we were so, when we built the budget in June, we kind of pulled out a lot of pieces to try to get the budget to balance. Along with those pieces, we pulled out flexibility within departments. So this category is one we've had to rely on already within the 6 months of this fiscal year. And we have roughly, I want to say, about $50,000 left in that originally budgeted line item. This $479,409 would replenish a balance in that account, which, as you all know, cannot be used without additional council approval. So it would be set aside for unforeseen purposes, of which we have some somewhat known costs that we would look to rely on this bucket for. Some are COVID related. Some are winter storm related. And lastly, if there's any money left in this bucket at the end of the year, we would look to push as much of it as we can into the roads and sidewalks budget to hopefully fund 1 or 2 additional road paving jobs in the springtime. So that constitutes the entirety of the ask here. As I said before, there's a number of department heads here to address some of the specifics if you have questions. So I'll turn it back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Ailes. As always, great presentation. I really have to thank you for taking care of that deficit in that line item. That has been there as long as I've been here. And Mr. Perry was very adamant about making sure it got taken care of this year. So I appreciate that. So let's go out to members of the City Council with any questions or comments for any of Mayor Cahill's team. Councilor Rotundo.
I just got a couple of them, actually. One of them is to Chief LaLasher. In regards to the FLSA, I know Mr. Ailes just mentioned about the overtime going up to 40,000 additional over the 50. Is that probably, I'm trying to find, is that in response to the COVID that would affect that? Is this something that is going to historically start going in that direction the next year or two?
If I may, because FLSA really is calculated within my office, it really has not much to do with the department staffing or what the chief is kind of seeing as overtime needs. This is a reconciliation between what we pay as overtime as a community and what the federal law requires as a minimum amount that we pay. And we reconcile every paycheck in a one lump sum. And that's basically what happened here.
Okay, thank you for that. I did have one other question to follow up on a different matter. In regards to reduction of, let's if we were looking, and this is actually to you, Mr. Ailes, too. If we were looking to reduce the tax from 2.5 to 1.5, what would that look like to the average taxpayer's bill, say at a $6,000 home in real dollars and cents? If I'm making sense in that regard, I'm trying to simplify it, I guess, more so. I know we kind of discussed it at the June meeting in regards to trying to give some tax relief to the residents, especially with the pandemic going right now. So I'm trying to just get a sense of if we were to look into doing a 1% reduction, what would that look like on an average tax bill of $6,000 for the taxpayer?
So that's a very specific question. I've got a spreadsheet I can actually share to answer that. However, I would just caution if this is a conversation that you're entertaining, that it's a much broader conversation, because there are implications beyond the here and now by not going to the 2.5 Proposition 2.5 limit this year. That will affect next year's budget that I'd like to at least an opportunity to discuss as well. But let me share the spreadsheet that I have, if that's okay. So this spreadsheet is one we do internally once we get a good sense of where the tax rates are going to fall, which occurs after the shift is set. So these are examples of the average home value for different neighborhoods across Beverly. And you can see based on the neighborhood, they range anywhere from a low of $378,000 up to almost $4 million in the ocean side of Pride's Crossing. So the first numbered column is the assessed value. The next column is the tax bill for last year on average for those neighborhoods. The next column is the average tax bill for those neighborhoods of this year. Can everyone see this? I see people kind of getting close to the screen. Should I make it bigger?
No, it's good.
Okay. When we change colors here and go to the darker green shade, the next column shows the estimated average increase for each of those neighborhoods. And you can see the average increase ranges anywhere from $130 to roughly $820. And that's a product of two things. That's a product of the levy limit increasing by the statutorily allowed 2.5%. And it's also a product of fluctuation in values. So if the value of your home goes up at a greater percentage than the value of the rest of the city, you would arguably receive a larger tax increase than the rest of the city, percentage-wise. So those are the average increases in bills. If we were to, for hypothetical purposes here, look to take $500,000 off the table in terms of spending. First, the council would need to identify where that $500,000 would come from. And second, how it would impact each of the neighborhoods is listed here in the next column. And that would be a reduction to the increase. This is not a tax reduction, it's a reduction to the increase. So for instance, on the first line, the Ryle side single family average increase is going to be $192. If we took a $500,000 reduction, the average increase would go down from that $192 by $25. So it would be roughly $167 increase as opposed to $192, if I'm doing my math right. And so that's how this spreadsheet works. So you can see the numbers are on an annual basis, relatively modest for a $500,000 reduction. Divided by 4 would give you a sense of what the quarterly reduction would be in the quarterly tax bill. I also included, because I did get a couple other questions offline over the last few weeks about other types of scenarios. So if we were to go and take a $750,000 reduction in the spending levels, if that could be identified by the council, here's how it would affect the different neighborhoods. I was also asked to look at it from a percentage perspective, which is the last two columns. It's the same exercise. It just shows if we went to an increase of 2% over the levy as opposed to 2.5%, so basically backing off of the levy increase by a 0.5%, These are the neighborhood increases or decreases in the increase on average. And then I did the same thing if we came down a 1%, just to illustrate the numbers. But you could do this a million different ways because there's so many different scenarios. And at this point, it's really just simple math where you adjust the denominator and come up with the new answer. Is that helpful, Counselor?
Very much so. Thank you.
Thank you. Council Flaherty, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. This money is obviously needed for the city and for the schools. So the only thing I want to err on is a side of caution. The city of Beverly, obviously, if they gave us $8 million, could utilize that money for so many different areas, whether it be the schools, police, fire. The expenses that we have are real. The fire truck that we're using, where right now we're borrowing one from the city of Boston, renting one, I think we are. So we do have some real cost. My concern as we move forward into the future, and Mr. Ailes has said this, and the mayor has well, next year's budget is going to be a very difficult budget. It's an uncertain future. So I have said in the past few meetings that I do have concerns as we go forward with school funding, with public works funding, roads and sidewalks. How do we maintain? Because if you look, I don't have the percentage of what Beverly, but in Boston, 44% of those businesses, small businesses, are going to be closing because and not reopening because of this COVID situation that we're in. It's a concern. It's real. You can call it a recession. You can call it whatever you want. But my concern as we move forward, do we need some of these things? Absolutely. But my concern as we move forward, and I did talk to the mayor and Mr. Ailes about this before, on how businesses are closing and people are out of work. It is a concern. Not that I would advocate for this right now. I don't know the answer, but I did talk to the mayor about furloughs. The city of Beverly, we haven't laid anybody off since last March. And we have seen many businesses close and people furloughing throughout the Commonwealth of not Beverly. It's a real concern. I'm not saying that these employees aren't valued. They absolutely are. But we're in a pandemic. People are working from home. Some people aren't working 40 hours. I see that in my own business. It's just something that I think we need to kind of carefully look at, because when we make these decisions, we're going up 2.5% or 2% and making these difficult times. Last year, thank God, we had a great economy. The city of Beverly was doing well, but I worry about our future in the next few years as we head into this. And I think we just need to take a look at it all. Thank you.
Thanks, Council Flaherty. Just to Chief Peter O'Connor, do you want to talk about your department's need for that expenditure?
Thank you, President. What we'd be doing is we would be replacing one of our older engines. The engine was built in 2006. It's a workhorse right now. It's doing, as already this year, it's done about 1,200 runs, which is it's in the busiest section of the city. The pump that we would buy would actually go up into the North Beverly station. And the idea is that we can actually take advantage of a couple things when we put this pump up there. There's a lot of unusual hazards in the city of Beverly. We've got the airport, we've got 128, we've got the railroad tracks. One of my concerns for a long time has been Beverly Airport. It's a very unique problem, I guess you would say, for the Beverly Fire Department. It's a great resource for the city of Beverly, and it's done some tremendous growth over the last few years. So as we purchased this new pump, what we would do is we put some special features on there to protect the airport. The airport falls under the jurisdiction of the Beverly and Danvers Wenham fire departments. We also have a mutual aid agreement. We have Middleton come in. But the bottom line is one of the biggest assets for us up there with all of the policies that we've set in place is and one of the most important needs up there is speed. What this truck will give us the opportunity to do is roll up right on a plane, and actually be able to flow water while we're still rolling up on that aircraft. Inside the aircraft, they have about 90 seconds from the start of the fire for us to actually get foam and water on that fire. This is going to get us to that point where we're actually just rolling out right behind them. So we have a lot of plans in place. Right now, they rely on us stretching hoses to get the water on that fire. This will actually take a good minute and a half off of that, as we don't have to stretch those anymore. So that's one of the big changes to this truck, and it does add a little bit of an expense there. we're very fortunate, and I very much appreciate your consideration on this. We've been very fortunate. We've got the ladder on order. This is going to bring us up and actually give us a little bit more of a healthy reserve fleet as well, so that when we have a truck go out for maintenance or something else, we'll still have something else to be driving around in. Like I said, the truck that we'll be replacing with the 1,200 runs that it's been doing, we're kind of duct taping some stuff together right now to keep it going. It's not the oldest truck that we have, but it is definitely the first truck that we'll be replacing. It was built by a company called American LaFrance that went out of business a few years ago, so it's become very hard to get parts. Jack Morris did a phenomenal job of squirreling away some stuff while he could. So we're starting to kind of run out of those parts. So even though it's not the oldest pump, it's definitely the next one to go in the fleet. Aside from that, I can tell you a lot more about how we respond up to the airport. I can also tell you this, that that feature that I'm talking about won't only be an airport response feature. It's something we can use incidents up on the highway, along the highway. We could actually use it at structure fires. So it is going to be a tool that's going to be a multi-use for us. As far as the cost, I can tell you that we've watched the prices of apparatus just skyrocket in the last few years, unfortunately. They get a little bit the cost of steel that they're getting. I think there's a few different reasons for it. We saw it with the ladder truck, and I'm seeing it with this. I was a little surprised myself when the 750 came in, but I also believe that the value in that when we get it is going to be real. So.
Thank you, Chief. We have Councilor Rand would like to speak. Estelle, you have to unmute. No, you're unmuted.
Okay, I know. I'm having such trouble. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Oh, you can. Oh, shoot. I think I just muted myself again.
No, you're good.
Right, can you still? Okay. I'm sorry. Okay. Thank you. Actually, thank you, Chief O'Connor, for that explanation, because that was one of my main questions. I guess I have a couple comments and a question in there about this appropriation. First, I think this appropriation really does reflect the plan laid out in the capital expenditure plan. If when I look to that plan to see, okay, are these expenses something that have been discussed before? And definitely the pumper truck is in there. The replacement of vehicles is, that's part of our plan. So I think overall this appropriation sticks to the financial policies and planning that the city has had in place, not just for this moment, which I think is, to me, that gives me something to stand on in terms of accepting these numbers and where they're going, because it's not something that just was out of thin air made up for today. I guess my second comment is just that the reason why there's so much here, I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but to me, the other thing I'm reflecting on is that the FY21 budget was really responsible in terms of anticipating a major cut from the state. And this is sort of a reflection of level funding from the state, basically. And we anticipated a pretty big cut. So that's another thing that I keep in the back of my mind when thinking about this appropriation. Maybe just a question, Mr. Ailes, I know I had asked you if it was possible to look into maybe some airport funding to help out the support of that pumper truck. I don't know if you were able to get any answers on that in the last week.
I was not, but it was a great point, and we're researching it. So if that were to become something that was available to the city, we would absolutely take 100% advantage of it, and that would return some of these funds back to the general fund without question. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. And then that brings me to my next question. Maybe Mr. Perry, if you can maybe just remind me, what is the target range of our free cash at the end of each budget cycle? Because just looking at these numbers, I'm seeing that there's a potential for, maybe like over $100,000 to be turned back to free cash potentially. And I just want to be reminded what we aim for.
Sure, Council. Good evening, everybody. The financial policies try to get between 3 and 8% of the general fund target, if you will, for free cash. The free cash this year, though not certified yet, will probably be a little bit more inflated than we've seen in other years because the administration, as you know, last March froze a lot of spending throughout the departments. A lot of money was turned back, including the schools, and I publicly thank them for that as well. They did that, plus Mr. Ailes is the finance director, took approximately $1 million out of overlay reserve to beef that up because we just didn't know what was going to happen. So my expectation for next year, not the certification you'll see in a few more weeks, but a year from now, will certainly be down, in my view, $2, $3, $4 million. So 3 to 8% is kind of the target rate of the general fund.
Okay, thank you. And then I guess I just wanted to add to Councilor Rotundo's sort of line of questioning and this dilemma that I feel like many councilors are focusing or thinking about, this idea of not raising to the full 2.5% the tax levy. And, when you look at really what is a lean city budget, it feels like, what's the point of reducing by $200,000 this overall revenue? But I think I'll keep asking those questions because I do think that $25 compounded year after year after year is what gets us to today. So I don't think that we have this problem of overpaying employees to work 37 hours instead of 40 hours a week or anything like that. I don't think we have this fat in our city that needs to be cut, but I do think we can consider more seriously year after year why we're going to the max. And so thank you for engaging in that discussion with me, Mr. Ailes, Mr. Perry, and Mayor. I think we've definitely brought it up at every turn over the last couple months. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Rand. We'll go to Councilor Houseman, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. We just finished the financial forecasting report. And to the sort of thinking about what Councilor Flaherty's, Rotundo, and Rand are raising is, we're always trying to figure out how we can provide the services we want, the services folks in the residents of the city are looking for, and at the same time not always go to the max of the tax levy. And so we do have this conversation repeatedly, and it's an important conversation. We should be having it. We should always be looking at trying to figure whether there's a way, and if so, how we might address not getting there. That is, going to the full levy limit. But I do want to talk specifically about next year, which we have known for a while, given our projections, that next year was going to be particularly difficult. And I guess I could ask Mr. Ailes to express, sort of in shorthand, if he can, or if he would, what I'm talking about in terms of what that sort of a bump is for next year that makes it particularly difficult. But as we consider 2.5 versus 1.5 and so forth, we have to keep in mind that we're facing right now a projected budget deficit, and that's going with the full levy. So I agree with Councilor Rand. I mean, I've raised the point myself. Isn't there some way, even if it's, I don't want to call it symbolically, symbolic, but at least some kind of indication to the taxpayers that we are doing something to try to address that? But it remains a difficult conversation because then it comes down to all of us to cut a budget and to ask the administration to do that. So far, they haven't done it, which leaves it to us. And without planning ahead of time and working with the administration collaboratively, that becomes a lot more difficult. So I guess I'd like to ask Mr. Ailes if you describe briefly what will make next year particularly difficult, and then ask Mr. Perry if he would to address how the supplemental appropriation that's on the table right now will help, in his opinion, will help us meet or reduce that budget deficit. So that's sort of a two-pronged question. If you wouldn't mind, Mr. Ailes, and then Mr. Perry.
Sure, I'd be happy to, Counselor. I couldn't agree more with your remarks. The major components of the increase that we're facing going into FY22, there's a few. We typically expect our pension obligation to go up by roughly $500,000 a year. That's typically what it does every year. So that's baked into the FY22 projections. But the ones that kind of spike up have to do with our debt. We still have to borrow the final borrowing for our middle school. And hopefully, if the MSBA completes their audit process before the end of this fiscal year, we will permanently borrow the entirety of our borrowing for the middle school. And that will add another $12 million roughly to our debt obligation. So that, coupled with the debt for the police station, which we had always been planning on, and we've targeted that at $24 million. But the combination of those two pieces being permanently borrowed actually increases our debt obligation by roughly $1.5 million year over year. So I've just now mentioned $2 million in cost increases. You have your typical salary-related increases that are collectively bargained and obligated contractually. And then you also have a big unforeseen at this point has to do with our sanitation contract. We are at the process where our current contract with JRM is expiring, and we need to renegotiate. And the environment that we're renegotiating is night and day when you compare it to the last time we negotiated the terms and rates. The incineration rate of our solid waste, the last time we negotiated was in the low 60s per ton. We are expecting, based on market rates, to be upwards of 90 per ton. Now, we incinerate about 12,000 tons per year. So just compound it. In addition to that, the recycling market has changed drastically from when we last negotiated. The last contract called for them to just come and pick up the recycling. There was no disposal fee of it because there was a market for the reuse of that recycling material. That market has eroded to a point where they're actually paying now to get rid of our recycling. And we don't pay for that right now under the current contract, but when we renegotiate, it's very much expected that those costs get baked into the overall contract. So year over year cost increase, we are expecting to be roughly $600,000 to the taxpayers. And so those are some of the real big ones. There's a few others. Obviously the schools have contractual related increases that we would expect and need to bake in to any budget projection. But those, I believe, are the main ones. Mayor, please chime in if you think I'm missing something, but I think those were the big ones, Counselor.
Thank you.
And if I could, Councilor Houseman, answer the second part of your question there. First off, I would agree with pretty much everything Mr. Ailes said. As you know, Councilor Houseman is chair of the Financial Forecast Committee, and coupled with Councilor Raines, who works on that. And I think we have some other members here this evening from the school side who work pretty hard on that. We have identified what we believe to be, at this point in time, I really emphasize that, a pretty serious deficit for next year in the vicinity of about $4.5 million, all things being equal. So we have to take strategies to try to bring that down so we don't have a serious problem on our hands next year. One of the strategies that the administration has done with the proposal before you is that the difference, and I wrote a memo to you on some of this last Friday, recurring versus one-time expenditures. Every time we have a one-time expenditure that we will not repeat in future years, especially next fiscal year, that will help reduce next year's deficit challenge that we'll all be facing here. And based upon my analysis, the request from the administration here would amount to a little over 3.7 million. 2.6 million of that is one-time expenditures, like a fire truck, like stabilization funds, the funding of the deficit, things of that nature, which I strongly support personally as your budget analyst, both the stabilization and the deficit funds. But that aside, if you do agree and do finally decide to do all that, it's my view, and I think shared by the finance director and certainly the members of the Financial Forecast Committee, that 4.5%, if you pass this as is, would drop down to a deficit in the vicinity of about 1.9 million. So we still have a challenge, and I do compliment the administration for the one-time expenditures like fire trucks, things of that nature. I think it's a wise decision to do that given the circumstances that we face here. And like everything else, when we build a budget, it's not just in the moment, it's what's the impact on the future. And I think Bryant and the mayor and everybody else involved have looked pretty hard at that. And while we still have our challenges, the one-time strategy is a real good one. So I hope, Councilor, that answers your question with regard to next year's budgetary issues.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Houseman. I'm going to go to Councilor Ames, and then I'm going to ask Dr. Chirotchik to speak on behalf of the school appropriation. Councilor Ames.
Thank you, Mr. President. I can completely appreciate all the comments I've heard to this point on this really important topic, because how we spend our money is really a reflection of our community goals and values. And so given my time just on the financial forecast, which was a great conversation, we're tonight talking about almost $3.75 million in supplemental income. We're looking at a free cash number over $10 million, and which is the largest. I think the administration will have to tell us if it's ever been that big before, and a fully funded rainy day fund. So we have to admit the fact that the finances of the city are in very good shape. And while they are, we also have to be aware of the fact that out there, it's raining. So I am here tonight. I think that it's pretty obvious when you look at the capital plan, and I got it right here. The 2 fire trucks were originally meant to be taken out of the rainy day fund. So if there were to be any reduction in the tax rate, it should be the $750,000 for the fire truck. And I am not going to advocate for that tonight. But there are a couple of things that I am thinking about that I wanted to discuss with the administration here tonight, where I think the budget falls short. I would love to really have more accountability, so that people out there understand the direct result of the funds as they're spent. And the first question that I have for the administration is the cost that it will take to finish up Cabot Street. The dollars and where that will be coming from. The second piece is in our small group conversations, we were talking about $200,000 for the police department, and and I could be wrong and things could have changed, that we were talking about a cruiser, we were talking about another leadership position on the force, and we were talking about 2 patrolmen. And I believe very strongly that given what 2020 has brought to us, that we need to bolster the community impact unit, because it's those officers that really create the ties between the department and people out in the community, and they're invaluable. Secondly, I would really like the administration to commit to working as hard as it can to extend the grant for the social worker through Leahy, because I can tell you personally stories where she has had made such an incredible difference to people in my ward. And I just have to say that I am also loath to support more dollars for the police department when we have not seen the report on the police policies and procedures that was promised to us months ago, and I have not heard anything about it. And I would really like to see a promise from the mayor and the chief that before February 15th, we could see a completed report and to have you before the council to discuss it at a meeting. And finally, I would also suggest that to come out of the unforeseen line, that your health, planning, and engineering departments really update their pest control policies. Because between construction, COVID, and abandoned properties, we have seen inundated neighborhoods, rat, roach inundated neighborhoods, putting people's health at risk, in peril, in these times where they're trying to be home. So I'm just going to say, tonight is the night where this council has power. And it's the power of the purse, and it's the power of the people that we represent. So those are the questions that I have, and I look forward to hearing, what the administration has to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Ames. Mayor Kale or Mr. Ailes?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Councilor. In terms of the request for funding that would be utilized for potentially another position or two in the department between now and end of year, and for another vehicle, their conversations are ongoing between Chief Lasher, Mr. Ailes, and me about how to best achieve, how to best manage that type of resource. Whether or not an additional officer goes into the community impact unit will be a management decision by the chief. Certainly the 2 community impact officers do fantastic work. At the same time, that's not the only structure that can be utilized to work on community policing efforts. I mean, our SROs do a lot of work in community policing. The CLU does. Our patrol officers do. So, we'll have to see how that may get structured. We've talked about a goal of when the civilian dispatch is up and running with the new station, we'll have the benefit of 4.5 full-time positions on the police department, which is essentially what's required to have an officer, a uniformed officer, answering phones at the dispatch. That amount of police personnel will be available to be back on the street, which is essentially 1 officer full-time, 7 days, 24 hours. We have it in mind to try to achieve a similar increase over a number of fiscal years of another 4 to 4.5 FTEs. This is because the need is there in terms of overall staffing. Our goal is that when we get to that level of staffing, we'll be able to see the ability to fully staff our patrol units so that there'll be a patrol in each of the 6 areas of the city. There are 6 patrol beats or areas. The goal is to be able to ensure that without having to use overtime. So during different parts of the year under the contract, so many officers on a given shift can take there are various types of paid time off. They could take a paid shift off, right? Vacation, comp time, et cetera. And so from Labor Day to Memorial Day, there can be 3 officers per shift taking paid time off. Between Memorial Day and Labor Day, which was the time everybody wants vacation, there can be 4. And so you want to start from a number of officers on staff per shift that you can subtract out the 3 or the 4 and still be fully staffed without having to resort to overtime. And so that's a part of our goal in terms of staffing. So that's just a little bit there. The social worker, and we've talked about this, Counselor, and I really appreciate your point of view on both of these issues. The social worker through Leahy, absolutely. I mean, we were part of going after the grant for that. We know the important work that social worker does in partnership with our officers. And everybody in the department believes in the value of that position. When we talked the other day, I think my perception of where we are is we're in year 2 of a 3-year grant. So I've got to check the dates on that, but certainly we all believe in it. We all want to either find a separate grant or a continuation, another round of, whatever it takes to try to make sure that we have that resource available to our department and to our residents is important. You asked about policies, and I'll say specifically the one policy that I said that we were going to review carefully and put out for the public to then get to review is the police department use of force policy. We've been working on that really quite a bit and have it ready to share. And we've just kind of held on to it the last week, 10 days, because the police reform bill at the state level seems every day to be kind of ready to come out. And there are some things pending there that may change or reinforce some of what's in our policy. But we'll put it out publicly with or without the police reform bill passing in the next couple of business days, because I've said I'd do that. We had a meeting late last week to try to nail down some language we've been kind of working through and trying to finalize. By that I mean Chief LaLasher, our legal office, and me. So we'll put that out in the next couple of days, with or without the state's legislation. And you'll see there are just a couple of areas that may shift based on what that final version of the reform bill, if it comes out of conference committee at the state level, there may be a couple of things that shift in our policy based on that. Did I miss anything?
Yes, but thank you very much for that. And you and I get to agree to disagree on the community impact officers. I totally respect that. I think that this year they're so important. And I just want you to hear my voice as a Ward 3 representative who's downtown, and the impact that they make on the Gloucester Crossing and downtown neighborhoods is phenomenal. I wanted a budget number for Cabot Street, understanding that you have a lot of things in flux. You need to negotiate with the businesses when that work comes and where that money has come from. And finally, rats.
Mr. Rales, I don't want to get the wrong number. I think the total project number on Cabot is around the 1.2, 1.3 range. I'm just going from memory, and and about 400 of it, roughly 400, 450 was Complete Streets money. I can go back and get those numbers, Council. We can follow up on that. And as you know, because we talked about it just the other day, you and I, we're just about ready to finish the project, but we went to the business owners and said, look, would you rather we try to finish it this fall? Would you rather we go at it in the spring, coming right off of winter? And nobody at that time in the early fall was looking to close down their outdoor dining. And we're trying to work with our downtown business owners to make sure that everybody gets through this pandemic. on issues around any type of infestation in a home, those are oftentimes private homes and issues that it's hard for us to get involved with. But as you know, you and I worked together on one in Ward 3 this year, and we were able to act really decisively and go in and take some strong steps, and I think make a significant improvement in 2 different neighborhoods. And we actually had to look to the health department budget to cover some costs, which we try to be very careful about the city going in and doing things on a private property. But in each of these instances, they were unique enough circumstances that it made sense. So thank you for bringing that up as well.
I just believe that as whether there's a construction project, even privately, or a construction project where we're digging up roads, that we need to be more proactive as a city, just to track and understand and try to remediate before it gets out of control. Because what happened in both those situations was just so unfortunate for our residents. And I know, because I have so much faith in our health department, that we can as a city just, be more proactive and do better. So thank you. And just finally, so the 400 for Cabot Street, the 1.2 million, the $450,000 budgeted, that money has already been earmarked. We've raised it. It's in the budget currently.
Yeah, when the project was scoped out initially, I think the overall cost isn't off by much from where we scoped it. The 450 was a grant from the state through the Complete Streets program. And that has been spent, and a good chunk of our piece has been spent, and it's in this year's paving, road and sidewalk program budget, in the FY21 budget.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor,
Sure.
Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you, Councilor Ames. Good questions and great answers. Thank you. Let's go to Dr. Chirocek. Hello, Doctor.
Hi, how are you? Thank you, President Guanci. So I actually, if it's okay with you, I'd like to share a few slides. I know that Bryant comes with spreadsheets. I usually come with slides. So, and when I have a captive audience like this, I like to share as much as I can so everybody can know everything that's going on with the schools. Hold on one second.
And I appreciate that because I think it's much easier for people to follow.
Oh, well, that's good. It's easier for me to stay on track too. So, and I do want to share, a couple of people have reached out to me with some questions. So I did try to incorporate some of that information in the presentation as well. So, but just first, really thank you for the opportunity to share with you some of this information regarding the current school year and the resources that we've utilized to make this year happen. Certainly, and it's been alluded to earlier in the meeting, it's been a year like no other, unprecedented, unique, uncertain, just to name a few adjectives that really can't even begin to describe it. This year, we've created new opportunities for our students in both remote learning and in how we learn in person. And throughout it all, our partnership with our families and the dedication of our staff, and by staff, I mean all our staff, has allowed us to remain flexible and nimble, 2 words that really have taken on a new meaning for all of us in 2020. To further complicate our planning process, we had to make decisions and create learning structures without the benefit of a final state budget that would have provided some certainty to a very uncertain situation. Fortunately, tonight, we have at least a piece of the puzzle that will allow us to move forward in our planning. So first, I want to share with you the impact the pandemic has had on our schools so that you have a basic understanding of some of the challenges that we addressed as we reopened schools. Some of the changes include the creation of a remote learning academy, which 775 of our students are enrolled. The RLA, as we call it, is in essence, at the elementary level at least, equivalent to building a new school with the enrollment of 385 students that rivals the size of most of the 5 elementary schools in Beverly. and we needed to assign or hire staff to accommodate families who were choosing to have their children participate in remote instruction. This option was one that we were required to provide, and as you can see, many families have opted in. Additionally, we needed to make physical changes to classrooms for in-person instruction. These included finding a way to ensure 4.5-foot distancing for our elementary schools and 6-foot distancing for the middle and high school classrooms. In addition, we created isolation spaces for our infirmaries, outdoor learning areas at each school, provided plexiglass barriers for spaces that serve the general public, and in shared office spaces, just to name a few. We received new guidance on bus capacity and procedures for student transportation, which include limiting our regular bus passengers to 21 students. And we continued to monitor increasing enrollments at both the RLA and the in-person. Fortunately, we were able to utilize some relief funds that were made available to cities and towns and to school districts, because quite frankly, I'm sure you're wondering how in the world we pulled all of those things off with the budget that we have. Tonight, I'll share with you what those funding sources were and how they were used. 2 of the funding sources end on December 30th and need to be expended in that time, while a third is a 2-year grant that will carry over into FY22. So this first funding source is the CARES Act. The city received $3.7 million in what we refer to as CARES money. And I want to caution you that the naming of funding sources are often confused by acronyms. So I've settled on the ones that I'm using here tonight. Of the total appropriation of CARES money, the school was approved for $1,101,930. And as with all grant funding, there are particular allowable expenses and restrictions on the way in which money can be used. The school district identified those allowable expenses, and we were fortunate to acquire a great deal of the necessary funds to assist us in the planning and reopening of schools. And this slide lays out for you what some of those categories were: the PPE, the additional technology needs, which allowed us to provide a one-to-one environment for our students that would support the remote learning that was necessary, laptops for teachers to conduct the remote learning, docking stations for our central office workers so that they could do remote work at home during the closure, and monitors for classrooms so that teachers can utilize them during the in-person instruction. So we also required instructional software purchases, which were licenses, extra seats for some of our online platforms, and platforms for remote learning. And then finally, we needed to make modifications to facilities that I alluded to earlier. So this is the breakdown of how that CARES money was spent. So just to give you one example of how that worked. We had a second source of funding. The second source of funding was the Coronavirus Relief Fund for schools, or what we call CVRF. The $1,025,775 also had specific allowable areas. And as you can see, we utilized the bulk of the funding on salaries that enabled us to create the RLA, as well as some additional classes that were required to meet the distancing guidance at each level. We purchased storage trailers at each school site to hold the overflow of furniture. Although if any of you have been at the middle or high school, you'll know that half of each one of those gyms is also holding some of our overflow furniture, which all had to be moved out of classes in order to make room for the distancing guidelines. Finally, we were able to purchase 3 minibuses, which we also needed to meet the guidelines for distancing on buses and for transportation. And a very small amount of the money was used for supplies for outdoor learning. We had a third source of funding that was made available to the schools. This was the Esser Grant. This grant is available for 2 years, but all of the expenditures on this grant need to be identified and approved by DESE. So one thing that's really important to understand regarding this grant is that the allowable expenses contain the same general requirement as our entitlement grants. That would be our Title I, our Title IIA. And the purpose of this funding is really to address the unique needs of our more vulnerable student groups. This funding is currently providing the salary for our Director of Opportunity Access and Equity, as well as some of the extended learning opportunities for students with identified learning gaps. So here you'll see an accounting of the FY21 school budget. When we came to you in June of 2020 with our plan for the 2021 school year, the budget was based on a few assumptions. While the state had not yet finalized their budget, in fact, they operated on a monthly 1/12 budget for the months of June through November. We continue to receive guidance that due to the new Chapter 70 formula, Beverly was poised to receive at least a minimum level funding, and that actually we could anticipate an increase as the result of our increasing enrollments and student groups. We are thrilled that this has now been finalized and that we have some accurate numbers to tie to the projections that we anticipated. This slide shows the budget figures that were presented and approved by you on June 11th, 2020. And as you can see, at that time, we built the budget relying on level funding from our FY20 Chapter 70 money and the city appropriation of $53,160,375. Now that we've finalized the numbers for the actual Chapter 70 funding for FY21, we hope that we'll be operating with the city in addition to the city appropriation on a revised budget of $63,285,805. My goal in sharing all this information with all of you is to provide you with the context regarding the funding in FY21. It has certainly been a challenge to identify resources for the variety of funding needs the school has faced this past year. Creating new models of instruction that included technologies that had never before been utilized, allocating staff to work in remote environments, and determining how to best support them in that work, and reimagining schools, both in model and in physical setup, required resourcing that upended our original budget planning. However, one thing that we did not want to allow to happen was to distract us from our goals. Our commitment to universal design and access for all students, innovative and authentic learning experiences, and a rigorous and relevant curriculum remained at the forefront of each one of our decisions. We are so grateful to have the opportunity for this additional grant resource, the additional grant resources that we have. And we are also relieved that the budget is now finalized and that our FY21 Chapter 70 has been increased. Some of the areas that were left unsolved as we await the final signature from the governor are outlined here on this slide. As I noted before, the CVRF funds were through December. And as such, we will need to find alternate funding sources for some of the staffing increases due to RLA. In addition, and most important, and of most importance, is the contract for all of our unions, all 6 of them, were up for renewal on August 30th of this year. At this time, we have been continuing with negotiations and are hopeful that this funding will help us in this regard. I think that all of you will agree, our teachers, our paras, our administrators, and our 3 AFSCME units, which include our food service staff, our transportation staff, and our clerical staff, have answered the call this year in a big way. They have been ready, willing, and able to do whatever it takes to keep our schools open and our students and families fed. I look forward to getting this final budget funding appropriated and to finalizing our budget for the FY21 school year. With continued uncertainty as we enter the new year, we will now shift our focus to planning for the 21-22 school year. I have said often that as challenging as it was to close schools in March and reopen them again in this fall, the task of recovery and reimagining schooling and planning our priorities for FY22 will pose a new and different set of challenges. One thing is certain, however, it will take all of us working together to continue to provide a high quality education for our students in Beverly. And so I thank you for your consideration tonight as you consider the budget.
Thank you, Dr. Trocheck, for sharing all that important information. Council Feldman, do you have a question for Dr. Trocheck?
I do, yeah.
Great,
Thank you, Dr. Trocheck, for that very, very detailed explanation of the budget and the resources. And as a parent of children in the Beverly Public Schools, I've just been so thankful to all the school department and the administration has really done during the pandemic to support our children at all levels. So thank you. I did have a question about the last slide that you showed with the negotiations with the 6 different unions. And I was wondering if you had a ballpark or a number that we're looking at in terms of the expense that would be for these negotiations. Like what is the ballpark we're looking at?
Well, we're in negotiations, and so as such, we really can't talk about anything in specific or in particular that we've talked about. But one of the things that I can share is that for teachers, or for actually collectively all of our units, we use sort of some round figures to kind of judge what an increase, what a 1% increase to salaries would be, what a 2% increase to salaries would be. And so just to kind of give you some numbers to work in your head, it's about $460,000 for 1% to cover all of the all of the units at a 1% increase. So if that's helpful for you, just to give you some general idea about what our salary structure is and how we work with our employees. I've learned to work from Dr. Hershey actually in those big numbers, and it helps me when I'm trying to wrap myself around exactly what I'm talking about within a budget. So I hope that's helpful.
Yes, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any other members of the council with questions for either Dr. Chirocek or Mayor Cahill or Mr. Ailes? All right, so we'll bring it out to members of the public, and the first member of the public that contacted me was School Committee President Rachel Abel. Ms. Abel.
Thank you, President Guanci, and thank you, councilors. I'm here tonight as Rachel Abel, resident of 19 Echo Ave, and I'm speaking as the parent of a 6th grader and a 7th grader at the Beverly Middle School. I don't know that I can take off my school committee hat, but I just wanted to be here tonight, not to diminish the work of the council, but to really highlight tonight, as Dr. Chirocek has done, the hardworking staff and educators and the parents too, for making school happen in this unprecedented year. I have to say, you know, I'm living the dream with a 6th and 7th grader at home. It's a real team effort this year, and while nothing's flawless, my experience as a parent to middle schoolers is that the staff is really bridging more than ever before to support our young learners. And whether that's finding creative and engaging ways to connect while learning remotely, or just adjust to the way that our hybrid classrooms are set up 6 feet apart, and we're not doing team projects in the same ways anymore. They're really going above and beyond to address not only the educational needs, but the social and emotional needs of our tweens and teens. And it's being done at a scale unlike ever before. So it's great for me to see how collaborative the staff have been and how it's really been an all hands on deck. Since this is a team effort, I am here today to make the simple request to you, and this is where I can't shake that school committee hat, but I would appreciate as a parent and a taxpayer here in Beverly, that you please appropriate the additional Chapter 70 money that's been outlined to the schools in its entirety tonight. Just prior to the pandemic, we were working collaboratively to renew contracts with teachers, nurses, paras, our transportation, food service, clerks, and administrators. And we have appreciated greatly that these groups have been super patient while we try to get some sense of clarity about where our budget was going to land for this year. So with the additional appropriation, I would feel good to make sure that we get agreements signed and pay back wages. So your swift approval tonight would help us accomplish this goal and support the teamwork that we've been seeing across our city. I'm not sure if this was discussed, but I do see also that we have some one-time revenue shortfalls, and I know Mr. Perry was really keen to make sure that we understand the real challenge that lays ahead. I've been fortunate enough to be on the Financial Forecast Committee and understand that next year is going to be a challenge. But in terms of our revenue shortfalls, we hope those are temporary in our building rentals and transportation revolving accounts, as well as some others. But anyway, I know there's a lot more to do on tonight's agenda, so I'll end there and just appreciate your consideration tonight to make sure that the additional Chapter 70 money is put to good use in the schools this year, and hopefully we'll have a little bit more certainty as we move forward in the next budget cycle. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Abel. Any other members of the public wish to speak, ask a question, or make a comment? Okay, how about members of the city council? Anything to follow up about? Mayor Cahill, Mayor Brian Ailes, or Mr. Perry, comments before we close the public hearing? Hearing no further questions or comments, I will close the public hearing, and I would ask for a motion to I would entertain a motion to accept the mayor's request.
So moved.
Second.
And a roll call, Ms. Kent?
Ames,
Yes.
Spelman,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Flowers,
Yes.
Frady's,
Yes.
Houseman,
Yes.
Rand,
Yes.
Rotundo,
Yes.
and Guanci.
Yes, thank you, everybody. Great questions, great answers. I appreciate the superintendent, Dr. Chirocek, for being here. Now we're on to communications from His Honor the Mayor.
Order number 278. Dear Honorable City Council, attached is a memorandum from Phil Simowitz from Forestry and Grounds Foreman and City Arborist detailing the scope of work funded by the Metropolitan Area Planning Council's Accelerating Climate Resilient Grant and an update on the city's tree planting activities. Sincerely yours, Michael P. Cahill, Mayor.
I would entertain, one of the councils asked for that, I think, Mayor Cahill, last meeting.
I'm sorry, the letter from Mr. Klimowitz?
Yes.
Yep.
I think it was Councilor Ames that asked about where the trees were going to be planted and everything like that. So Councilor Ames, we can receive that and place it on file? Great, thank you. I'd entertain a motion to receive order number 278 and place it on file.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Ames? Yes. Feldman?
Yes.
Flaherty?
Yes.
Flowers?
Yes.
Frady's?
Yes.
Houseman?
Yes.
Rand?
Yes.
Rotundo?
Yes.
And Guanci.
Yes, and for members of the public that are still with us, anything we receive and place on file can be found in the city clerk's office. I mean, during good times, you could stop in and pick up a copy of it, or I'm sure Ms. Kent would be happy to email anybody a copy. Thank you, Ms. Kent.
Yep.
Order number 279.
Order 279. Dear Honorable City Council, as you're aware, over the last 2 years, the Planning Department and Mayor's Office has led in the formulation of the new comprehensive master plan for the City of Beverly, a process we named Plan Beverly. By virtue of this letter, I am submitting the plan to you and requesting that you set a time for a short presentation to City Council at either regular or special meeting. Understanding that your December 21st, 2020 meeting is quite busy, we expect a January meeting may be more reasonable. Work began on the master plan in late 2018 with the development of requests for proposals and the ultimate selection of the consulting firm Utile Inc. in February 2019. An extensive public process starting in May 2019 and continuing through early 2020, including 3 public workshops, 7 neighborhood meetings, focus groups, surveys, and engagements at numerous community events. We are pleased to announce that at the December 15, 2020 meeting at the Beverly Planning Board unanimously adopted a new comprehensive master plan for our community. Master General Law, Chapter 41, Section 81D. The master plan creates a framework to guide the preservation, enhancement, and responsible growth of our city. It recognizes and provides strategies for key issues that currently do and will continue to face Beverly in the next decade, such as addressing the housing need, economy with opportunity for growth and choice, taking action in response to climate change, ensuring equitability, opportunity for
Ms. Kent, you checked out.
you and many. It can be downloaded from the Plan Beverly website and the Planning Department's website, which reach out to Ms. Wynn, have a paper copy. While City Council is not required to vote to adopt the plan, we seek your support and endorsement in this vision for the City of Beverly over the next 10 to 15 years, recognizing the important role we will play in implementing the plan. Sincerely yours, Michael P. Cahill, Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Kent. Before I go to Darlene Wynn, our planning director, who I see just joined us, Council Flaherty has a me under his name. Council Flaherty.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would hope that the city council will have the opportunity to vote on this. I know there might be a difference of opinion, but to me, this is not the mayor's master plan. It is the city of Beverly's master plan. So I would hope that we would discuss this. It's an important document, and we can discuss the merits of it. on the next meeting, but I would hope that we can talk about that because there's a lot at stake with this master plan. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Council Flaherty. Ms. Nguyen, I'm hoping to put this on our agenda for January 4th. Are you okay with that?
I think that sounds great. Yes.
Do you have
Yeah,
anything?
and I think just to clarify, and the mayor may want to speak as well. I think the letter states that the state law requires the planning board to adopt the master plan. We are seeking the city council's support, which is why we would like to present it to council and have a discussion about it. So.
And if I could add, Mr. President,
of course,
I agree wholeheartedly with Councilor Flaherty and Ms. Nguyen explained it well. Once the plan now that the plan has been adopted by the planning board, it's the tool we'll be using for the next 10 plus years. And master plans typically it's not the only thing they do, but among the recommendations are opportunities for discussions and potential adoption of some zoning changes. So, we're looking for the council to discuss it, tug at it with us, ask questions, and hopefully take a vote. Maybe it's a vote of endorsement or whatever it may be, kind of on the themes and the values of the master plan. The details are going to be fertile ground for us to discuss and debate and try to work through in the coming months and years. And we hope that this master plan will serve us as well as the master plan that it's replacing has served the city, because it's been something we've leaned on heavily for a number of years to, I think, good effect for the community.
Thank you, Mayor Cahill. So I would just ask Ms. Kent to hold that to our until our January 4th meeting. Order number 280, please.
Order number 280. Dear Honorable City Council, I hereby appoint, subject to review and recommendation, Mr. Christian Rivera, 9 William Street, Apartment 307 in Roxbury, Mass, to serve as constable of the City of Beverly for the express purpose of serving civil process. Attached. Am I out again?
No, you're good.
Attached is Mr. Rivera's application, which is approved by the Police Chief, John LaLatcher. Mr. Rivera's term will be effective from December 21st, 2020 until December 21st, 2023. Sincerely yours, Michael P. Cahill, Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Kent. I'm sorry, I jumped the gun on you. Please refer that to the Committee on Legal Affairs. Communications from other city offices and boards.
Order number 281. Dear Honorable City Council, please find a summary report of the school committee finance and facilities for the second quarter of FY21 for your review. Council Flowers and I will continue to provide a quarterly report to keep you informed of the school's finance and facilities. Respectfully, Councilor Todd Rotundo.
Councilor Rotundo, do you have anything to add before we receive that and place it on file?
I do not. Thank you.
Okay. Council Flowers?
Thank you. I would just add my word of thanks to Councilor Rotundo, who is my fellow liaison to the school committee and really suggested to me this idea that we could file reports each quarter. And I think it's a great idea. So I wanted to thank Councilor Rotundo for that, and also thank Ms. Sherburne and the members of the school administration team for their help and partnership in making that happen.
No, and I really appreciate it, because I've been asking city councils to do that for a number of years, and it's nice to see it finally happens. Nice that you work together. And remember, you both don't have to be in a meeting. You could probably alternate, help out with your social life, right? But I would entertain a motion to receive that and place it on file.
So moved.
Second.
And a roll call.
Ames?
Yes.
Feldman?
Yes.
Flaherty?
Yes.
Flowers?
Yes.
Brady?
Yes.
Houseman?
Yes.
Rand?
Yes.
Rotundo?
Yes.
And Guanci.
Yes. Order number 283.
Order number 283, from the budget analyst Jerry Perry. It's a financial forecast report.
Mr. Perry, would you like to make a comment before we send that somewhere, please?
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, very quickly, I really probably defer to Councilor Houseman as chair, or Councilor Ames, who also serves on the committee. The only thing I'd share in advance of maybe the Chairman Houseman's comments is To my knowledge, this is probably the first time, even looking at old records, that this committee finished its report by the end of the calendar year as required by both charter and city ordinance. They really did a great job. It really was like almost 12 months worth of planning this out to get it done. And as you can see from the appropriation request, it came in handy tonight in terms of your strategy and trying to figure it out. So I'm really pleased that they were able to get it done. I think they're going to meet a little bit in January too. But that said, Mr. President, I would defer to Chairman Houseman if you wanted to add some comments.
Chairman Houseman, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'll just be brief. Just a couple of comments. One is the committee put together the forecast without the knowledge, only in a hoped anticipation that there would be action at the State House on some kind of supplemental budget. So that is not incorporated into this forecast, but it is anticipated by it. And we did agree and stated in the report that we will meet at a supplemental meeting in January in order to incorporate the action that the council has taken this evening on the supplemental appropriation. The other one or two things I might say is that I've continued to try to make the report, insist that the committee make the report as concise as possible so that it becomes a useful document for the council, so that it does not become unduly burdensome to try to wade through another financial document. We get plenty of those in order to understand what the forecast is all about. And then I guess the last thing I would say on that score is to point out that the financial forecast does point out that we are forecasting a deficit. That's not particularly unusual at this time of the year, but it's important for the council to take a look at that, understand why that is the case, and it simply underscores sort of the budget discussion we've had this evening. So it's relatively concise, and I encourage the councilors to, because of that, hopefully they will find it a useful document to review. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Houseman, and thank you, Councilor Ames, and the two school committee reps that are on that committee also. And Councilor Ames wants to speak. Councilor Ames?
Thank you. Just very briefly, yes, this it's a great group of people. We had some wonderful discussions, and I think that this year we talked about the $4.5 million deficit, but when you're looking at those numbers, I hope you understand that the administration that we made the assumption that there would be another 17.5% cut in local aid. And many of the cuts that the administration made last year were put back into the budget. So that is part of the big delta. So, on top of that, trash is a big deal. We spent a decent amount of time talking about revenue and and ways to try to grow the pie for the city. So I don't go too deep into it, but I think that it's worth 20 minutes of looking through it, because I think this committee made some great progress thinking through these issues, and it's a very useful tool. So thank you for everybody who took part in this. It was really a fulfilling exercise.
Mr. President, I'd be remiss. I didn't want to cut off Councilor Ames. I didn't quite squeeze in. Really, a big thank you goes to all of the members of the committee who put an awful lot of time and energy and passion, frankly, into producing the report, going through the discussions. It's one of those things that makes Beverly special is the volunteers that we have. And that was demonstrated in spades in the work of this committee. So thank you to all those members, some of whom are here this evening.
And Councilor Houseman, just to follow up, our citizen representatives are Karen Fogarty and Paul Manzo?
That is correct, and also Mr. Shams as well.
Great, thank you. We have no motions and orders. Let's go to old business. We'll take it out of order and go to order number 241, 241A, and 241B.
President Guanzi, I think Councilor Rand wanted to speak.
Oh, okay, thank you. Councilor Rand.
Thank you. I'll be brief. I'm just curious, will the financial forecast be available on the city's website? I know we have it, but what's an easy way to share it with the public? Because it really is a boiled down, useful document.
We've had that discussion, and we are very much hoping we're informed by the administration that there are some roadblocks to actually getting it on the website, but we've requested, we're pushing for that, and it's certainly going to be available from the city clerk's office. I understand that the city website is going through a major rehaul, and when that is done, this report and others like it should be available as a matter of course. I'm not sure. I guess I defer to Mr. Ailes if he knows off the top of his head, or the mayor, if it's going to be possible for this to be available on the website in short order or not. That I do not know.
Very likely we can get it up in short order.
Thank you, Mr. Ailes. And thank you for chiming in there, Councilor Wren. I appreciate it, because that reminded me that I need to entertain a motion to receive that and place it on file.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Ms. Kent.
King,
Yes.
Feldman,
Yes.
Flowers,
Yes.
Brady,
Yes.
Houseman,
Yes, and thank you to Councilor Rand for that question.
Rand, Rotundo,
Yes.
Yes.
and Guanci.
Yes. So we have no motions and orders. We'll go to old business, and we'll take order number 241, 241A, 241B, which council members asked us to hold last week. Ms. Kent, you have to read that order, please.
Sure. Order 241, a proposed order amending Beverly Ordinance, Section 26-14, salary and expenses of council members by, number one, increasing the salary of each member of the city council to $14,000, and B, the city council president to $15,000, which such increase could be effective January 1st. Do you want me to write them all three of them?
Please, go ahead.
Order number 241A, proposed order amending Beverly Ordinance Section 6912 unclassified salaries by increasing the salaries of the mayor to $135,000, each member of the school committee to $7,000, and to the school committee president to $7,500, which such increase to be effective January 1st, 2022. And order number 241B, proposed order amending Beverly Ordinance Section 58-1, budget management analyst by adding Section C6 as follows. The budget management analyst shall be by no later than October 31st, the first year of a 2-year term, provide a report to the city council with information sufficient to allow the city council to consider taking those steps necessary under the city charter to adjust the salaries of the mayor, the city council, and the school committee members. Minimum requirements of the report shall include the compensation of current elected officials and appointed officials, as well as information regarding the regional consumer price index and/or cost of living adjustments for Social Security recipients. A copy of each report shall be provided to the mayor. Such report shall be a prerequisite to passing an ordinance increasing the salary of any elected official.
Thank you, Ms. Kent. Mr. Perry, can you just give us a 2-minute recap?
Sure, Mr. President. As you recall, back in January, the City Council unanimously requested that a salary review be done of all the elected officials of the city of Beverly, given that we had heard at that point in time that it had been approximately 25 years since at least the City Council had received any cost of living whatsoever. The request for the council asked that an independent committee be formed and approved by the council to look at their recommendations and provide something before the end of the calendar year consistent with our city ordinances and the city charter. We got delayed a little bit, as everyone knows, due to the COVID issue, but we brought it back together in the summer. The committee worked hard and diligently, and as You know, they are basically recommending some slight increases for city council, again, who hasn't received anything in 25 years, some slight increases for the school committee, an increase to the mayor's position, and then a new ordinance requiring your budget analyst, who would at this point be me anyways, to look at this every 2 years. The committee did it independently. The committee, the consultant, and myself have all recommended that this be done. As your budget analyst, I'm not naive to this. This is difficult stuff, requesting salary increases for elected officials, even during normal times. And it makes it even more difficult during the COVID. I think we all would agree with that. However, and unfortunately, it's not like something you can look at 6 months down the road. The way it's structured, to avoid conflict of interest, you are in essence voting, if you do vote, whatever you vote, you can only vote for these increases for the next elected mayor, council, and school committee. And so there's a lag here, if you will. So this is the year to do that. You have to get it done per our charter by the end of this calendar year. So you really, I guess tonight's the night you'll make your decisions. You've all received the report. You saw the data. The data drives the recommendations of the independent group. And I think, and I commend the council president. He was adamant with me in trying to coordinate all this to make sure this is done in a transparent format. So we had your public hearing a couple of weeks ago where it was talked about. I was actually surprised no members of the community spoke on it, but that's what happened. So the bottom line to it is it's a tough choice. I understand that. I mean, you all don't do this. No one does this for the money. We know that. You do it for service to your community. From my perspective, I feel you need to protect the institutions of the positions you hold. This isn't about you folks. To me, it's about the positions and the institutionalization of those positions. So I really can't add much more to it. It's a tough decision. I get it. And I know, you know, you got to do what you feel is right. I think it's the right thing to do. And beyond that, it's not much more I can add, Mr. President. I'm more than happy to answer questions, but it's certainly the decision now comes for the council, what direction they want to take the whole thing. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that we did ask our questions at last meeting, but we'll see. Council Flaherty has something to say.
Yes, I still have my reservations. I understand the hard work that went into it, and I don't necessarily disagree, especially with the mayor's salary. The city council, you know, I don't think we really need an increase. I understand why the mayor would need one, especially when you're talking about local managers of other communities that are making more money, or the current mayor that's you know, where he is down the list compared to some of the people he supervises. It's just, I look at the situation where in a COVID situation, it's a difficult, and it's not going to go away. It's going to be here in 2022. So I am still concerned with it. But would there any way we could move it to 2024? Doesn't say we can't. You know, that's still in the off year. We're just delaying it a couple more years. I mean, if we, you know, next year is still going to be a problem. If we delay that several years, I think, you know, in that time, COVID be situation, it'll be a much better financial ground. That would be my recommendation to do that. I think we can.
Thank you, Council Flaherty. Anybody else? So we can do one of three things. We can take no further action on it. It goes away. We can approve it, and then it would come into effect in 2022, and it would all be subject to appropriation. If the council in 2022 didn't think the funds were available or warranted it, then they wouldn't have to do that. They wouldn't have to appropriate the funding for the increases, or we can receive it and place it on file. And in 2 years, if a future council decides to take another look at it, they already have this information that they can expound on. Council Flowers. Oh, Council Rand. I'm sorry, Council Flowers.
That's okay. I was going to say, I think Councilor Rand is ahead of me. Thank you.
Thank you. That's okay. Can you remind me, there's no way to separate out the parts of this, like adopting the idea to have a review every 2 years separately from the school committee and city council increase, for example. Is that possible? They're two different orders, right?
Right, they are 3 different orders.
So 3 different. So we could conceivably increase their salary and adopt a requirement for a report every 2 years and not agree to increase the city council salary.
So we would just, you're suggesting that we just adopt the proposed ordinance 241B?
Yeah, well, and that would just require the report to come to us every 2 years, correct?
It would, but Mr. Perry, the council can initiate that at any time every 2 years, correct?
Yes, it could. The reason that was put in there, it was kind of like a choice, at least historically, what we discovered in our research. You could do it, but we just never did, or the city never did it. Quite frankly, it just kind of floated through the year and forgot it. This kind of mandates at least a review. It's more of a requirement to get the job done, as opposed to you can only do it, but for whatever reasons, and this is really since it's my 4th year, but when I first got here, it was late there. It just never was really looked at. So you do have 3 orders. One is for, bear with me for a moment here. One is for the council, which is 241. So that would be one, if you don't want to do that, that's fine. The second order, 241A, incorporates the mayor's salary and school committee increases. And then the third order is 241B, which is what Councilor Rand just discussed, where it kind of really forces the city council to hear from your budget analyst as to his or her recommendations in this category and what the budget analyst would think in those matters. So yes, that's how I see it.
Thank you, Mr. Perry.
So sorry for my chimes, by the way, it's just about 9 o'clock. But I guess I'm asking, and I'm speaking hypothetically, but I will also just take the opportunity to say that I'm not comfortable increasing the city council salary at this time. And I think I'll leave it at that. And I feel like maybe other councilors may have more to say about that. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Rand. Councilor Flowers.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Part of my question was going to be what Councilor Rand just asked, which is, could we adopt the mechanism of having this more codified that it would come to us every 2 years without adopting the others? And it sounds like the answer is yes. And that, for me, that's where I would be inclined to be able to support the idea that we would make it more official, that we would receive this reporting and specific documentation. I think I don't want to belabor the point because I think I said most of what I felt about this at our last meeting where we talked about this issue, which is that I'm not opposed to the idea of the value of people's work. I think is important. And I understand that this is really valuing the work really of future school committees and future city councils and potentially future mayors. And so it's not that I'm opposed to that idea, and I actually think that is important. I think where I am right now is, I made the comparison to the retirement board coming to us and asking for an increase to the COLA base for our city retirees back when COVID was just starting. And like our committee, which I really value their work that worked on this, our independent committee, there is data also to back up the fact that our retirees are at the low end of the COLA base scale. And so my inclination was to want to increase that amount for our retirees, just as I believe in the importance of valuing people's work, including the work of future elected officials. But for me, it's a similar situation where it's almost the bad luck of the calendar or the year that we're in. It just doesn't feel like at this moment it's the time to do this. especially, given some of our prior conversations talking about, what are the ways that we might look to in the future offering relief for our taxpayers. And one of the ways that I noticed in the report, and also it was referenced a few times, is recurring expenses are really the place to look to that. And so these feel like examples of recurring expenses. And I know the point was made that in some cases these are small, modest increases. But I think all things considered, the timing doesn't feel right to me. So I guess I'll pause there. I think I said most of what I'm repeating myself from last meeting, but I appreciate the opportunity to mull it through and have some of this conversation. Thank you.
Council Flaherty again.
Yes, I mean, I talked about going out to 2024 to skipping the 2 years. Is there any appetite for that, to do that? I don't know why we couldn't do that. I know it does delay it, instead of doing it next year. It goes out a couple more years. I would vote for it if that was the case.
Well, there doesn't seem to be an appetite for it right now, and I would have to agree with everybody. It would be my inclination to ask for a motion to receive it and place it on file. And if somebody wanted to put forth an ordinance, an additional ordinance on asking the budget analyst to do the work at some specific time, whereas there's no money involved, I don't think that we need to do that by the end of this year. So if somebody's interested in doing that, that's something we can pick up again in January. So if nobody has anything else to add, I would entertain a motion to receive it and place it on file.
So moved.
Second.
And a roll call?
Is this for all the three orders?
All three, Ms. Kent.
All right, Ames,
Yes.
Coleman,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Flowers,
Yes.
Frady's,
Yes.
Houseman,
Yes.
Rand,
Yes.
Rotundo,
Yes.
and Guanci.
Yes, and I want to thank Mr. Perry for all his hard work, our consultant from UMass, and our three-person committee, Chairperson Alan Temkin, Bill Howard, who we all know was involved in everything in the city, and Rebecca Beckman. Thank you. Great information to have on file for future use. All right, next is our order number 268, candidates for the Ward 6 vote. I don't know about anybody else, but I was a little, I don't think if we did anything any different, I think that we did get the best candidate out of the school committee vote on Thursday. But tonight I'd like to do things a little different. I think there's a lot of us that have maybe a favorite candidate, or have a top three. We have Mr. Derek Beckwith, Mr. James Carnazza, Mr. Ralph Colantino, Mr. Dominic Copeland, Mr. Paul Lanzikos, Mr. Medley Long III, Mr. Dana Poski, Mr. Kent Sinclair, and Mr. Matt St. Hilaire. I spoke with Bob McCarthy, City Councilor in Salem. They had this issue a number of years ago. And what they did, their president opened up motions for the floor. If somebody had a motion and a second, they became eligible in that round of voting. The Salem City Council voted 300 times over 2 meetings. I don't expect us to do that. But it may take us a couple of rounds to come to some resolution. To look at, you hear so many things. You hear about people, well, this person isn't qualified. Everybody's qualified to be a city councilor. All you need to do is go out for a city councilor award position. You need to go out and get 50 signatures, have them certified, and you're on the ballot. Some of these resumes were amazing. And I think back to when I first ran in 1999, I'm like, how the hell did I get picked? Well, I ran an election, but the talent of so many of these people, some of the older gentlemen, some of the young kids, Mr. Ralph Colantino, Medley Long III, James Carnazza, they all put forth great enthusiasm as to why they should be picked. So if, hold on, Councilor Rotundo, you want to add something before I go on too long?
Yeah, no, I don't. I apologize. I hit that by accident.
All right. So Councilor Frady's wanted to make a comment before we got into this, but then we'll go through the process if everybody is good with that. As opposed to somebody getting nominated, a second and then run through that vote without anybody else to be considered. Are we all good with that? All right, let's go to Councilor Frates.
Well, thanks everyone. Just for the last time as a city councilor, I just wanted to thank everybody and also just mention what a pleasure it's been to serve. And I think we're going to be in a great hands in a few moments with someone terrific. The move that I've made is probably the most publicized move since they sold the house out from underneath President Taft, his summer White House move in Lynch Park in the old days. So that's not a bad line. But anyway, I do want to wish everybody great holidays, Merry Christmas, great serving with everybody. Sorry we can't do our annual dinner. But one thing, since I am going to recuse myself, unfortunately the charter doesn't allow me to vote, so I'll be watching along with everyone else. At the end, Council President always allows us to recognize a special group or have a note, and I'm going to ask that whoever takes this seat get involved with this group. There's a group that started 30 years or so ago in the Centerville neighborhood and quickly spread to the whole city, and it was in response to ladies' night out. So the wives would all go out, and the husbands would be home with the young children. In response to that, they started going out themselves. They called themselves the Bad Fathers Club. Well, these guys, yes, they raised a little bit of you-know-what back in the day, but in the last decade, they have raised anywhere from $600 to $7,500, and they give it away to specific Beverly people who are in dire need. This year, they picked 3 families to help. And what they're looking for is if anybody wants to send a donation to Art Cronin at 33 Middlebury, but more importantly, can we get some younger people into this club? Because now we were formerly bad fathers, we're now good grandfathers. So anyway, I bid you all adieu, and thank you for allowing me to speak and to serve with you and for you. Take care, everybody.
And you bringing up the Bad Fathers Club made me think of everybody's friend, Don Kelly, who passed away from COVID earlier this year. Today is his birthday. So we wish him high up above a happy birthday. He was a big part of the Bad Fathers Club and did so much for the city of Beverly in terms of raising funds for the needy. Big member of Rotary, did whatever he could through his business, Wayside Trailers, and to see posts about him today was sad, but he gave so much to the community. And he was a bad father, right?
Oh yeah, he was one of the instigators. But you said it so correctly that there are these hidden groups that do so much good, and these guys are going to kill me for publicizing this, but I think it really has to be said. So with that, everybody have a great night.
Thank you, Councilor Frates. Tim Flaherty is in the chat.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to thank Councilor Frates for all his work, and not only on the council, but throughout Beverly, throughout the years with his family. They made a lot of contributions, and a lot of people who might be new to Beverly or raising young children don't see that experience that he's had over the past 30, 40 years as a citizen of Beverly, and I just wanted to publicly thank him for that. And then I also wanted to ask a question about, before we make nominations, are we going to go out to the council to get, I tried to do this the other night with the school committee to get an idea to see what people are feeling, what they're going, and then we can make the nominations, or are we going to go just with the nominations up front?
No, I think we can go with the nominations up front. Everybody knows how they feel, and then we'll take it from there. And while there are 8 of us, so 5 is the majority. I would ask at the end, whoever is selected by the council to be a unanimous vote. So after somebody gets those 5 necessary votes, I'll ask for a vote of reconsideration, and hopefully we'll get a unanimous vote. trying to follow the lead that the school department did when they elected a superintendent this year. That would be nice. Because I think all in all, we all have different opinions. We all have different opinions on people's strengths and weaknesses. But I think through the years, we've always been a pretty cordial group. So that said, at this time, I would open up nominations for Ward 6, to fill the Ward 6 City Council vacancy.
Council President?
I missed you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify the process as I understand it. You are looking for multiple nominations to be on the floor all at the same time. Is that correct?
Correct. Just like we spoke about this afternoon.
Okay. So multiple, well, I just want to clarify for the other council just to make sure.
No, right.
Yeah, that what you're looking for or inviting is more than one motion to be made in serial order, so that we may in fact have 3 or 4 nominations on the floor at the same time for discussion, and then at some point we can decide to actually take a vote on any one of those. The other thing was, in terms of procedure, we discussed that an understanding that if a candidate does not get a majority of votes, which in this case would be 5, on the first round of voting, and that happens more than once, that candidate or any candidate would not be excluded from another vote on their nomination until we actually get to the point where someone gets a majority or more of the votes, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to be clear about the process.
Okay, we'll go slow. And for that candidate that is nominated, they'll need a second to stay in that round.
Fine. So I do want to make a nomination, but I also want to wait my turn. So I think someone got there before me. Mr. Rotundo, I believe.
Yes. Councilor Rotundo,
I motion to nominate Matt St. Hilaire.
is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Are there any other nominations?
Council President?
Councilor Houseman?
Yeah, I want to make a nomination, but I also want to read what something I've prepared in relationship to my nomination.
Is that's fine.
Okay, so it'll be essentially part of my motion, okay?
Okay. You want to read that first?
Yes, please.
Okay.
So first to you, Council President, and my fellow councilors, I want to honor and thank, as Councilor Flaherty did, our friend and colleague, Councilor Frates, excuse me, for his service to the council and Ward 6 in the city of Beverly. He's had an extraordinary record of service, and I wish him, and I'm sure the council does as well, joins me in wishing him and his family the best in the years to come. Tonight we face a question of who will serve out the term of Ward 6 City Councilor. And that question highlights how special our community is. The question requires to choose only one person from a large set of individuals, all of whom are capable, talented, ambitious, and accomplished. Each one of them would be a fine addition to the council. Each one of them would make a real contribution to the council. And each one of them would serve Ward 6 in the city well. But the city charter calls on us to select only one. It's important that we on the council, the candidates, and the residents of Ward 6 keep in mind that we are selecting someone to serve for only 1 year. The election season for Ward 6, for the Ward 6 seat, will start in only a few months, excuse me. And the next election for that seat is less than a year away. The glass half full for anyone who is not selected by the council tonight is that they can start a campaign for election unencumbered by the meetings, time constraints, and responsibilities that the new councilor will face if they're selected tonight. So what is our criteria for tonight's decision? If expressions of support, quote unquote, in the form of input from residents, that is to say emails that I and I believe all of my fellow councilors received, at last count, I guess I have to add, because I checked just before the meeting started, so I've got to add, I think, 9 to my tally here. A total of 183 emails came in. The top 2 vote getters in number of emails was 75 for Mr. Copeland and 52 for Mr. St. Hilaire. And the next closest vote for a candidate was Mr. Beckwith at 18 emails in support. Qualitatively, the votes for these 3 candidates can be boiled down to, in air quotes, experience versus a fresh voice, or a track record versus a new perspective on issues. One of our former city council colleagues has suggested that past electoral prowess is the obvious and controlling factor. And I agree at first glance that this is an appealing criteria. However, past electoral success is looking backward. In this case, most recently, I believe 3 years ago, to a different field of candidates and issues than at play. But elections, I think, are about the future, shaped by the moment, the candidates, and the issues at hand. In addition, our former councilor colleague suggested that any choice other than that of a previously elected councilor would be a choice focused on our own, us voting tonight, personal issues, and those should be subordinate to the interests of the voters of Ward 6. Setting aside the sort of proxy of emails received as indications of support, which would suggest a different choice for a candidate other than our former colleague recommends, this second argument also ignores and contradicts our city charter, which, for better or worse, says the logic of our former colleague is misplaced. Under the circumstances of the last election, the charter has charged us 8 councilors, not the Ward 6 voters, in a special election, to decide what the issues of the moment are and what candidate can best address them. Only a special election with the current candidates and the current issues would tell us of today's future candidates, which of today's future candidates would be most persuasive, which issues most compelling, and what vision of the future is most concern to Ward 6 voters. In less than a year from now, there will be an election, and the candidates and the issues then, at that point, will stand the test of the voters. But that is then, not today. Speaking for myself as a ward councilor, I consider a ward councilor's first responsibilities as constituent support within his or her ward. This is a ward councilor's bread and butter responsibility. But it is equally important to acknowledge that each ward councilor holds citywide responsibilities and makes decisions affecting all of the wards in the city. The agenda for tonight's meeting provides obvious examples of this, for example, a vote affecting the entire city budget, a vote that we've deferred now to January, but a vote on the city's master plan, affecting issues such as affordable housing and economic development for the entire city. So every councilor, whether ward councilor or at large, has an equal vote and provides equal leadership in decisions that affect the entire city and every ward, not just their own. In this context, it should be acknowledged that the email support, quote unquote, that the top email support getter, in this case, Mr. Copeland, received much of his support from wards across the city, not just Ward 6. Mr. St. Hilaire's support was almost exclusively in Ward 6. These are strong indications of support, I want to note. They are not precise votes, if you will, because in my tally of emails that came in, some came from spouses. So you would say that's a two two people who cast a indication of support, but I only am counting emails received. So this is not an exact tally of votes, quote unquote, per se. They're simply strong indicators of relative support that we've received. So taken as they are, this is where I arrive to consider the factors that are most determinative for me. We have in our set of candidates, as has been mentioned, men who have stellar backgrounds in a wide range of professional and community work, from United Nations and international democracy promotion to advising local Cub Scout Pack 49, from leading departments in a global Fortune 100 a global Fortune 100 multinational corporation to the entrepreneurial initiative of a self-employed startup, from administrative experience in the governor's office to administrative experience in the district court. They are, without question, the stuff that would make for a good or great city councilor. Yet much of the wealth of these backgrounds did not register in the voices of those who wrote to the council of their hopes for who we might select tonight. They fell away from the moment at hand, and so I ask why. I ask myself why. So why is there so much interest in Mr. Copeland's candidacy, not just in Ward 6, but also across the city? I believe it is because his candidacy speaks to this moment in our city's history as a microcosm of our nation's history. For a start, in taking the step to put his name in consideration and organizing a campaign to put himself before us for consideration, like other contenders did, he has proven himself a leader and one who offers a new voice. What is that voice that I have heard? He speaks about new issues, such as financial literacy for underserved members of our community, and new ideas for youth job creation and municipal revenue generation that I have not heard before. I have had conversations with him about race and uncomfortable moments in those conversations that I cannot, by definition, because he is a Black man, have with the other contenders for this council position. Those uncomfortable moments are valuable, they are necessary, and I think we must be willing to have them if we are to find our way in dealing with issues of race, inclusion, tolerance, and reconciliation in Beverly. That is, if we care to seek out and listen to a voice for a population of Beverly residents we have not heard before. The city's executive branch, school department, and now school committee have taken concrete steps through personnel decisions to employ people of color in the context of Mayor Cahill's August 24th, 2020 executive order declaring racism a public health emergency in Beverly. By selecting Mr. Copeland tonight, the council would join the other branches of our city government in taking a step to engage with the historically underrepresented community in our city. And perhaps that voice would be heard on the council for only 1 year, because this is a moment of opportunity for only a limited time. But I believe in choosing Mr. Copeland, choosing Mr. Copeland would be more about addressing underrepresentation alone. It is not simply because he is a person of color. His candidacy speaks to the aspiration of our city to become a place where we are all truly welcome. He can bring a fresh perspective to the council at a time of unprecedented financial and public health challenges. He offers a voice that is largely missing and has been missing from our deliberations as a council. For all of these reasons, I believe Ward 6 would be ably served by Mr. Copeland, and the voters of the future will have a final and future say next November. And with that, I would like to place Mr. Copeland's name in nomination for our consideration.
Thank you, Councilor. Well said. Second by...
Yes, second.
Second by Councilor Grant. Any more nominations? Councilor Ames?
Thank you, Council President, to my fellow councilors and everyone here watching tonight. I mean, this is a unique experience for all of us, and it's heady. I mean, we have some phenomenal candidates with broad experience who could all serve this city so well. And when this first came about, I reached out to an old friend of mine, Derek Beckwith, who I've known since the early mid-'80s, who serves on the planning board and the CPC as someone who is thoughtful and kind and smart and a wonderful problem solver. Because as a new ward councilor myself, I know how important it is to have someone as someone who's empathic to many different people on the council and to all of their constituents, to have someone who understands local government, to someone who understands state and national government, has the relationships and works really well with colleagues to create something bigger than what exists now. So I'm placing his name in nomination, and hope that you will consider him. It's really my honor to nominate Derek Beckwith. Thank you.
Mr. President, I'll second that motion.
Councilor Feldman?
Yes, thank you. I actually don't have a nomination. I just had comments. So if somebody else has a nomination before that.
Okay. Do we have any more nominations? Okay, so in this round we have Matt St. Hilaire, Dominic Copeland, and Derek Beckwith. Have all been nominated. They've been seconded. Now comments are fine. Councilor Feldman.
Yes, thank you. I was going to, following up on what Councilor Houseman had said about letters of support and emails. I solicited emails or letters of support because I really felt that was the best way to make sure, like, my main goal is to do right by the voters of Ward 6 and to do right by the city of Beverly for their future. So this was a really challenging choice given the candidates and how amazingly qualified and uniquely qualified some of them are. And as Councilor Houseman had said, I came up with 184 letters, but I also had some people speak to me personally, and I will say that I was very, I hope that both the voters of Ward 6 and all of the candidates know that I was trying to be my best to be transparent and fair in the process and make sure that I heard the voice of the voters of Ward 6 and my own constituents as well, because I did have quite a few Ward 5 residents write to me as their counselor directly. So I just want to thank everyone for stepping up, all of the candidates for stepping up. And I also want to say that I really continue to feel that this is a decision that should be made by the voters of Ward 6. And I sincerely hope that we have many of these candidates pull papers on April 1st, because this was very challenging. And looking at the numbers and the support that was coming in, it's a really close race, and in terms of how much support came in and from where. And because of that, because I am staying true to my rubric of letters of support, I will only be voting in the first round for the candidate that got the most letters of support. So I'm having to stick with personally that rubric of what I had decided in advance to be fair to the candidates and to the voters that I asked for their opinion from.
Thank you, Councilor Feldman. Councilor Flowers.
I think is ahead of me. I noticed.
Oh, I'm sorry, right, Councilor Rotundo. I just get confused. Please leave the chat for city councils.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Councilor Flowers. So I just want to also elaborate on what Councilor Hausman and Councilor Feldman have said. I too follow the same system, but I also had the opportunity to talk to every candidate at length of, anywhere from 15 to 20, 25 minutes with the 3 questions that I had proposed to ask at one of the meetings, which we never used. So I was able to actually have one-on-one conversations before the nominations or before consideration of our meeting. And then afterwards, I followed up with every single candidate. So it gave me a better sense of how they felt. But I also did use the, the letter writing candidate of supports for me. And so for me, the uniqueness that I have having a restaurant and having a lot of people coming in from the community is I have a lot of people from Ward 6 that are customers of mine. So it gives me an opportunity to have a one-on-one. But for me, it's, interestingly enough, for me, Matt was the highest. He had 79, 69 in the ward, 10 outside of the ward. Dominic had 45 in the ward, and he had 32 outside of the ward. Derek had 29, Kent had 10, 3 outside of the ward. Medley had 9, 2 outside of the ward on top of that, and then Dane had 2 in the ward. And then, so for me, it was, really taking 2 ways of coming to this. One is actually speaking, interviewing. I still don't think this is the fairest process. That as a counselor, I'm deciding as one of the 8 votes to decide for the 7,000 citizens of Ward 6 who will be the best for them. The one thing that I do have a good sense is that they're not going to get a bad candidate no matter what or who we choose. The fact is it's hard, and that's why I think we were all really coming at different angles with this, because there are really great, strong candidates going for this. And I do hope once we do pick an appointee for this, that going forward, that the other candidates do consider in April. And Councilor Hausman's right, is they have this, they have to run a campaign, and you have 3 new councilors right here. We all know what it's like to run a campaign and what it's like to go to the meetings and see what it's about and learning it. There is a learning curve with this process. So I just want to give where my sense came to, and I did come with an open mind. I really truly used some sort of a system, and it's not perfect at all, but I didn't come in with a plan of who I was picking. And, again, it's still early in the meeting, and let's see how this process still plays out. So I just want to, take the opportunity to say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Rotundo. Now, Councilor Flowers.
Thank you. Well, I also just want to first say that I will echo what my fellow councilors have said, which is there is not a bad choice in this mix of candidates. And Ward 6, I believe, would be well served by any of them. And I, like I'm sure many councilors, also feel, I've felt the weight of this decision, not only for the voters and the residents of Ward 6, for that reason, absolutely, and also for the fact that each of these 8 candidates brings their own unique perspective and is a unique and valuable voice and person within our community. And many of them I know personally and know to be outstanding candidates, and the ones that I have gotten to know through this process, I have come to find are outstanding candidates. And so I want to echo the thanks to all the candidates for putting their names in, and also would encourage, as others have done, people pulling papers and running. The city of Beverly is fortunate, and I felt this at the school committee vote as well. The city of Beverly is fortunate to have so many people, not only the names before us for consideration for this seat or for the Ward 2 school committee seat, but every person who emailed, called, reached out to voice their support for a candidate in one of those 2 decisions. We are a fortunate community to have so many engaged, involved, passionate, caring people. And I feel like if there is one thing we can take from this as a community, it's that we are well poised to continue to grow and move together as a community because we have so many people who are invested and care deeply about Beverly. And I think that has come through just so clearly, and I'm grateful for that. Yeah, as I have thought and as I have considered all of the candidates, I also I did not have as organized a rubric, I think, as some of my fellow counselors. I'm impressed by some of the tracking that seems to have happened. But I was paying close attention to emails and really did read every email that I received and worked really hard to reply to them. So if someone has emailed me, I haven't replied yet, please know that I will get back to you. So I appreciate that you took the time to reach out. You know, as I thought about the fact that every one of these candidates brings unique qualifications, I guess I will echo some of what Councillor Houseman has said, because one of the things that I really have been considering and thinking quite a lot about is that part of Mr. Copeland's specific and unique qualification is his lived experience as a man of color in Beverly. And when I think about that, you know, I think, unfortunately, I think it can be sometimes easy for the system, for those of us particularly who have enjoyed power and privilege in a system, to discount that as something less than real experience. And I actually see it quite the opposite. I see it as a very specific qualification that Mr. Copeland brings, which is a point of view, a perspective, and the lived experience here in Beverly that none of the other counselors, we can't claim to understand or to know what it's like for our friends and neighbors of color in Beverly. And yet we are charged with representing all of our friends and neighbors in Beverly. And so when I have been considering all the candidates and thinking this decision through, I've been thinking quite a lot about the ways in which representation matters, which we know, and people in our community seeing themselves reflected in their city government and in City Hall. That matters, and we know that. But I also have been thinking about being a body of 9 voices that together are charged with making decisions for our whole community, but not embodying people who look like our whole community means that we always we're striving after a goal that I believe we fall short of, because I will say about myself, I can never be the expert of someone else's lived experience, and I certainly cannot understand what it is to live as a person of color in Beverly, but I can strive to listen. I can strive to try to understand, but I also think there is incredible merit in knowing when it's also time to pass the microphone or to share the microphone. And for me, this is part of this choice, is that this is an opportunity that we have to broaden the experience of the council when it comes to the lived experience of people in Beverly across the city and across Ward 6, and to invite more voices to the microphone. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Flowers. Councilor Rand?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
I can.
Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you. So I guess I wanted to just say that this is really quite an amazing process and an amazing year to have this process, the honor of being part of this twice even. So I don't know, it's 2020. So I wanted to take this opportunity to say that the way the charter is written, yes, if we had more people running against us, not that I don't want to welcome an opponent, but at the same time, and I hope you guys can all quote me if this turns out not in my favor eventually, but if yeah,
you do know that John Frady's just moved to Ward 2, right?
I do. The first thing I asked him was, "Are you going to run against me?"
Right.
But really, and I've known Medley, I've worked with you for a long time, and I don't know how many times we sat together and said, yeah, you should run, so I think if I can just share a message of being really supportive and encouraging people to run, even against me, because it's not personal. That doesn't mean you think I'm bad, I hope. I mean, in some cases, it might have negative connotation, but overall, it means that you have something to offer this city that's different from me. And that's true no matter who you are. You're not crazy because you think that. You're an amazing human being. So I think, to me, that's a really big message that I'm getting from this whole experience, that if there had been people stepping up to run, this would be a different process. And I find that fascinating. So I feel like that was a good opportunity for a PSA about just run, keep doing it, even against me. It keeps us on our toes. Now I'm really making my summer difficult. I know I can feel it now. And then I also just want to say that I am voting with my head and my heart. And as a 43-year-old woman, I have learned to listen to that voice that tells me the right thing to do. Sometimes it's really hard to hear it, but I am humbled and honored to be part of opening the door for Mr. Dominic Copeland. I've also, over the years, encouraged him to run as well. And so while there are so many of you that stepped up who I love dearly, I hope you know that I support you, and I feel really proud to be part of today and to be able to vote for Dominic. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Rand. Any other comments from members of the council? Councilor Flaherty.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I guess I took a little different twist on this, and I appreciate what Mr. Hausman, brought forth. I didn't look at it as the emails. I mean, that was a consideration, having some support of that, but I didn't look at it like someone like a Derek Beckwith, who didn't solicit, emails to us. I looked at his experience, and that's what I kind of looked at as an overall. Everybody brings a unique experience, and I do underestimate Mr. Copeland, who I know, and I talked to him today on the phone, and I can understand where the councilors are coming from. But I guess I looked at it, I try to look my rubric as experience. Someone like a Derek Beckwith or a Matt St. Hilaire, I think, has the most experience of the nine. That's where I went. But I also believe if any one of these people decided to get the nominee, would be just fine. I mean, I look at someone like a Ralph Colantino. He's 24 years old, and the youth are unrepresented as well. I mean, nothing against anybody here, but he's 24 years old. I don't think we come close. You know what? And he's a smart young man that could add a lot to this council. So I don't think we can go wrong. I do feel proud of the vote we took the other night on the school committee with Dr. McKenzie, who's going to add a lot of value and experience with the school committee, and that's one of the reasons why I voted for her, because of that experience. And as many of you I've talked to you before, I don't take this lightly. My brother-in-law, as I mentioned before, is Black, and I've known him for 40 years, and I rely heavily on his experience growing up in the streets of Philadelphia and now in the Boston area, and to get an idea of, I don't personally know, obviously, but he does. And it's nice to have someone in your family that can kind of bring that perspective. So that being said, I thought that I tried to look at everybody. I didn't do the email kind of thing that some of the councilors did, which I can respect. But again, I try to talk to everybody and try to look at their experience and look at their resumes. And that's where I came up with, that's why I seconded Matt St. Hilaire, who I think has the most experience for this short period of time that can jump right in there. But I would be Derek Beckwith is also somebody that, that's why I seconded teams, because honestly, if I didn't think I seconded that, I don't think Mr. Beckwith would have got a second. So that's why I second that nomination. And again, I'm open to, as we move forward after this vote has happened, into the second round or third round, to see where we're at. And I'm open to to change in my mind because any one of these counselors, several appointees are excellent candidates. So that's where I came from. And I just want people to know where I'm at. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Flaherty. Anybody else? All great comments about great people. I really appreciate everybody's input. So I'll take in order of nominations. Ms. Kent, you look like you want to tell me something.
No, just
You're
wait.
good. Okay.
I'm good.
So a roll call. Obviously, it's either yes or no. We'll start with Matt St. Hilaire.
Okay. Ames?
No.
Feldman?
No.
Flaherty?
Yes.
Flowers?
No.
Houseman?
No.
Rand?
No.
Rotundo?
Yes.
And Guanci?
I am a yes. So St. Hilaire will be out of this round 3-5. Let's move on to Dominic Copeland.
Ames?
No.
Feldman?
Yes.
Flaherty?
No.
Flowers?
Yes.
Houseman?
Yes.
Rand?
Yes.
Rotundo?
No.
Guanci?
And no. So Mr. Copeland has 4 votes. And now Mr. Beckwith.
Ames?
Yes.
Feldman?
No.
Flaherty?
No.
Flowers?
No.
Houseman?
Point of clarification, who is this vote on?
Beckwith?
Eric Beckwith.
No.
Rand?
No.
Rotundo?
No.
And Guanci?
And no. So neither of, we have 3 nominations that nobody got the required number of votes, 5. So we'll open up round 2 for nominations.
Mr. President, are you looking for renominations of?
Nominations we'd like to do.
I see. I'll renominate Mr. Copeland.
Very good. Second,
Second.
are there any other nominations in this round? Councilor Rand? Or was
I'm
that the
sorry, I had just, yeah, you got it.
Okay. I thought I saw you nodding off and maybe you hit the button.
I'm way too excited for that.
Good to hear. So we have only Mr. Copeland as a nomination in this round. Councilor Rotundo,
Nominate Matt St. Hilaire.
second to that?
I'll second.
Okay. Other nominations? Okay, we'll close nominations and we will go
Can I nominate Derek Beckwith?
again, Council Flaherty?
Yes.
Second.
Second? Okay. Is that all, guys? So we will go to Mr. Copeland. Ms. Kent?
Ames?
Yes.
Feldman?
Yes.
Flaherty?
No.
Flowers?
Yes.
Houseman?
Yes.
Rand?
Yes.
Rotundo?
No.
Guanci?
I am going to, I'm hopefully going to delay the inevitable, but I'm going to vote yes. I mean, as much as Matt St. Hilaire, he was the first person I thought of when this seat came open. I think he would do a great job. He's been a good friend, a great colleague. If this was going to be my last year as council president or council or at large, I would have enjoyed serving with him. But now it looks like Dominic Copeland has the votes, and I'm going to use this year to, or the next few months, to get him ready to be a city councilor and whatever help that I can be. So I'm a yes. Ms. Kent, you have it 6-2?
I have a 6-2, but I think Councilor Rotundo is in the chat.
Councilor
Take that
Rotundo?
off, please. Nope, it hit it by accident.
Okay.
Okay, 6-2. I would ask for a vote of reconsideration to say, so that we possibly can get a unanimous decision.
Second.
Second, please.
Second.
Second.
Roll call.
Ames,
Yes.
Feldman,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Flowers,
Yes.
Houseman,
Yes.
Rand,
Yes.
Rotundo,
Yes.
and Guanci.
And the final vote for Mr. Copeland.
8-0.
No, that was for the reconsideration.
Oh, sorry.
One more.
Okay. Ames,
Yes.
Feldman,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Flowers,
Yes.
Houseman,
Yes.
Rand,
Yes.
Rotundo,
Yes.
and Guanci.
Yes. Mr. Copeland, congratulations.
Yes,
All right. You want to make a comment?
Yes, I just want to say thank you, everyone. I know it was an extremely difficult process. To everyone else, to Derek and Matt, and everyone else that ran, I definitely appreciate you guys, and you guys pushed me to be better and to do more and to be even greater. So I still look forward to working with all of you and making a difference. I look forward to doing the work for the people and for the city at an even higher level. So I can promise you this: your vote in me, your vote of confidence, will be well rewarded. So thank you. Thank you to the city and everyone that stepped up to make a difference. I think today signals in something great that we've done for this city, and I'm looking forward to doing my part and helping to make a difference. And I appreciate your vote of confidence in me. Thank you, everyone.
And Dominic, you have eight fellow councilors that want to see you succeed. So we're here to help whatever we can do.
Thank you. I'll be reaching out to all of you. I'll be, like you said, I stand on the shoulders of giants. So all of you and all your experience, I'm definitely looking forward to learn from and do my best to make a difference within this city. So thank you, everyone.
And certainly I would be amiss if I didn't reach out and thank Derek Beckwith, James Carnazza, Ralph Colantino, Paul Lanzikos, Medley Long, Dana Poski, Kent Sinclair, and Matt St. Hilaire for their efforts. And nomination papers are available April 1st. There'll be plenty of people out there to help you. You all have very good community support. Thank you. And Dominic, you'll check in with the city clerk's office to get sworn in. And I know Mayor Cahill would like to say something. Mayor?
Sure. Listen, thank you to everybody who put yourselves forward for this. Dominic, congratulations. Really look forward to working with you. Maybe we can grab coffee sometime in the next week or two.
Yeah. Thank you. Hey, we have a meeting to finish, don't we, guys? Thanks to all the members of the public that were available to be here for our vote, our historic vote. Reports from committees.
Order number 262, the appointment of Mr. David Allen St. Pierre of 179 Dodge Street to serve on the Conservation Commission.
I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Ames,
Yes.
Feldman,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Flowers,
Yes.
Houseman,
Yes.
Rand,
Yes.
Rotundo,
Yes.
and Guanci.
Yes.
Order number 265, appointment to Mr. Rodney Sinclair, 15 Devon Ave, to the planning board.
Motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Ames,
Yes.
Feldman,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Flowers,
Yes.
Houseman,
Yes.
Rand,
Yes.
Rotundo,
Yes.
and Guanxi.
Yes.
Order number 266, reappointments to Miss Ellen Flannery, Mr. Wayne Miller, and Mr. Zane Kraft to the planning board.
Motion to approve those appointments?
So moved.
Second.
Ames,
Roll call?
Yes.
Feldman,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Flowers,
Yes.
Houseman,
Yes.
Rand,
Yes.
Rotundo,
Yes.
and Guanxi.
Yes.
Order number 270, from the city clerk for the renewal of amusement licenses, and they've all been approved.
They have all been approved. Thank you. Ms. Kent, motion to approve Ms. Kent's request?
So moved.
Second.
Ames,
Roll call?
Yes.
Feldman,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Flowers,
Yes.
Houseman,
Yes.
Rand,
Yes.
Rotundo,
Yes.
and Guanxi.
Yes, I just have to share something with you real quick. My daughter, who likes to peek in on her meetings, she just asked me why I have to take attendance so many times. We're just voting on a lot of different things. Ms. Kent, continue, please.
Order number 271, from the city clerk's office for renewal of the class 1, 2, and 3 dealership license. They have also been approved.
Thank you, Ms. Kent. Motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Ames,
Yes.
Feldman,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Flowers,
Yes.
Houseman,
Yes.
Rand,
Yes.
Rotundo,
Yes.
and Guanxi.
Yes.
Okay, now the public services, order number 263, reappointment Mr. Mark Casey to the Parks and Recreation Commission.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Ames,
Yes.
Feldman,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Flowers,
Yes.
Houseman,
Yes.
and
Yes.
Rotundo,
Yes.
and Guanxi.
Yes.
Order number 264, reappointments from Mr. Donald Newman, 26 Washington Street, to the Beverly Harbor Management Authority.
Motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Ames,
Yes.
Feldman,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Flowers,
Yes.
Houseman,
Yes.
Rand,
Yes.
Rotundo,
Yes.
and Guanxi.
Yes.
Order number 267, reappointments to Miss Nancy Dillon, 4 Middle Street, to the Waste Reduction Committee.
Motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Roll call?
Ames,
A very enthusiastic yes.
Feldman,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Flowers,
Yes.
Houseman,
Yes.
Rand,
Yes.
Rotundo,
Yes.
and Guanxi.
Yes.
And order number 274, reappointments from Mayor Paul Treffry, Mr. Paul Bean, Mr. Peter Gentili, Mr. Matthew Mazur from Danvers.
Motion to approve the airport appointments?
So moved.
So moved. Second.
So moved.
Roll call?
Ames,
Yes.
Feldman, Flaherty,
Yes.
Flowers,
Yes.
Houseman,
Yes.
Rand,
Yes.
Rotundo,
Yes.
and Guanxi.
Yes.
And that is it for committee work.
That is it. Good
That's it.
stuff. That's all we have.
You have something else?
Oh, what did I have?
You have to carry over any
Oh,
other.
yeah, I would entertain a motion to carry over any unfinished business from 2020 to 2021.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Roll call.
Ames,
Yes.
Feldman,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Flowers,
Yes.
Houseman,
Yes.
Rand,
Yes.
Rotundo,
Yes.
and Guanxi.
Yes. Now that's it.
That's it.
No, this,
President Guanxi, yeah.
Yeah.
There's one more, remember there's an announcement of,
oh, correct. Thank you, Councilor Rand.
yeah, an affordable housing lottery happening.
You have
It
the
looks
info.
like, I
say
do have the information in front of me. It's through the city of Gloucester, and it looks like you would get, there's a website to go to, sebhousing.com, and I believe this might actually be on our website under housing. I'm not sure if that's part of the upgrade or not, but it's sebhousing.com that you could go to look up the information. There's a public information session on January 11th. So the deadline is not, anytime in the immediate future, at least.
Goes quick. Thank you, Councilor, and I appreciate you remembering that because it was a few hours ago that we spoke about it. And I can't even remember to read the script every meeting. So, well, this is it's been quite a year. Everybody has done a fantastic job. Councilor Rand has been our liaison with the mayor's office with everything COVID. Our Board of Health has stepped up amazing. Our police department has stepped up and done tremendous work throughout this pandemic. Councilor Houseman has been a fabulous flag bearer in leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance this year. Very difficult. Now is the point where I wish I could say to everybody, where are we going to go for a drink? Fibbers, A and B, Soma, but we can't do that. So let's look forward to 2021. Mr. Copeland, welcome. Look forward to seeing you on January 1st. It will be virtual. But we're all here to help you get acclimated, and please reach out to me first as president, and I'll be able to hopefully lead you down the right path. Thank you, everybody. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Wish everybody a safe, happy, and healthy holiday. Mayor Cahill, thanks for everything this year. Look forward to working with you in 2021.
Thank you all.
All right. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Roll call.
Ames,
Yes.
Feldman,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Flowers, Houseman,
Yes. I think Councilor Flowers is trying to say yes.
Rand,
Yes.
Rotundo,
Yes.
and
And just,
Guanxi.
and heads up, Dominic, this one's always 8 or 9 to 0. That's a yes for me. Good night, everybody, and thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Happy
holidays,
winter.
everyone. Good night.
Yeah, happy holidays. Happy New
Thank
Year.
you. Happy solstice.